opinion. I wrote an op-ed urging people to vote for Proposition C, but at least at the moment, I don't know what the today election results would be. It looks like in the early vote, all the propositions are carrying, and that's very progressive for San Antonio. Let me just say, I firmly believe the people of San Antonio appreciate the long-term progress of our city. We've had a pretty good consensus, both with the public and our elected officials, mayors and city councils, about the economic growth, about bringing people into the mainstream economically, and we needed these propositions to keep that train going.
And as you know, Henry, the business community spent a lot of money pushing, especially for the C. And then you had the firefighters that were, but I hear in the last week or so that there was a diminished presence of firefighters at the polls. Maybe you heard that as well.
Yep. The firefighters were the ones who passed this proposition when they were having a fight with the previous city manager, Cheryl Scully. I thought it was a mistake for them to get into this fight because Cheryl Scully's no longer here. We have a city manager who's doing a tremendous job. But there's some people who believe that if you have a weaker city manager, you can then go around that person and go to the individual council members and get your way on the city council. If that were to become the rule, the way, that would be chaotic for our city and a very negative thing. We benefit from having the competence, managerial competence of a strong city manager, but also a good mayor and city council. So I'm happy this is going in this direction so far tonight.
Well, and another proposition that I wanted to ask you specifically about, sir, it would raise city council and pay for the mayor. The city council salary would go from $45,000 to about $70,000. The mayoral salary would go from $61,725 to more than $87,000. I pulled this stat, Mr. Cisneros. When you were the mayor of San Antonio, you made $4,500 per year. One of the lowest paid major city mayors in the country at the time. That's almost 20 times less. Hearing that number, hearing that salary, what do you think that means for San Antonio?
He got this
for
suit.
This position?
My enemies would say you get what you pay for. But the truth of the matter is we're at 1.5 million people. We are the 7th largest city in America. That is a big job. And we want the best talent we can get on the city council, and of course the best talent we can get as mayor. And you can't ask a person to sacrifice their family's well-being so they can have the glory and the honor of being the mayor of San Antonio. You want someone who can afford to do it. And even at the salaries that you just described, it's still not enough to compensate for what is a 24/7 job, Saturdays, Sundays, and every day of the week in a city of this size. And by the way, our system is working. We are a progressive city, respected all over America for our progress, making good progress on everything from crime prevention to economic development to educational initiatives. And I think we need to keep the momentum going and pay people if we expect them to work for us.
Well, at one time, Henry, it was really looked at as a part-time job, and we had a strong city manager by design.
Right.
We needed a professional, full-time city manager because everybody else was viewed as part-time.
Yeah.
But
and that would work when we were, could work for a city of 100,000 people.
And it all changed. But the thing to term limit a city manager, I always thought was insanity, to be honest with you. But the one thing I want to ask,
the combination of those things, Charlie, you limit the person's tenure, which puts you in the market to hire a new city manager, but you tell the people you're interviewing that they can only make so much, and it's lower now than Austin or Dallas.
No, it never made sense.
The budget now is $3.8
billion.
And you can't have a recent college grad CPA managing that.
That was just a frustration and anger directed at Cheryl Scully.
Yes,
I mean, if you can believe that's what happened, that's really what happened. But I want to ask former Mayor Cisneros here about changing the length of a term from 2 years to 4 years. Okay. Now, you're still going to only have 8 years.
Yeah.
But because Henry and I, when we ran for Congress, we had to face the voters every 2 years.
So did I.
Well,
as council member and as mayor.
but they're changing it tonight, aren't
Yes,
they?
they are. Yes, they are. And that was a charter commission recommendation. I was okay with running every 2 years because I never, like you guys, I never had to gear up for the election period. I was running all the time.
You were running.
Working
Yeah,
all
you're
the
just
time, the
running.
full 2 years.
That being challenging.
Yeah, but and the people kind of like the idea of calling people back, if they don't like what they're doing. But we're a large city, and to put somebody in there that can learn the job, do it effectively over a 4-year span, I think it's the proper thing to do. The larger we get, the more demanding we should be of our leadership, and give them a chance to develop, give them a chance to learn the ropes. So I think it's the right thing to do.
Anything you want to add on that, sir?
The only thing I'll mention is this used to be one of my favorite political trivia questions, right? Where I would ask people across the country, hey, we're the 7th largest city in the country, San Antonio. How much money do you think we're paying our city council members and our mayors? And like we were saying, though, like Charlie Gonzalez was mentioning, these salaries were set in the 1950s, right? And San Antonio was a tiny little place, and it wasn't until just a little less than a decade ago that we kind of changed it. So, but there's serious implications of that, right? Of who can run, or what do you have to do to sacrifice to be able to do that. If you're not wealthy, what you kind of have to go through. And so it's nice to see that we kind of continue to move in the right direction.
When I was mayor,
not just who we are as a city.
When I was mayor, the council members made $40 a week,
Right.
and the mayor made $80 a week. So I was just poor.
Right.
And I was lucky to have a wife who understood that. My daughters asked for food occasionally.
Yeah, and if you didn't, and if it was Thanksgiving or Christmas and you didn't have a meeting that week, right? You didn't get your 80. Yeah.
That's true.
gosh.
That's true. But I was lucky.
When we go to a break, I'm going to ask him if he still has trouble making ends meet.
I was a university professor in the University of Texas and later Trinity. Allowed me to teach and be a professor there and be council member and mayor at the same time, or I wouldn't have been able to serve, pure and simple.
Definitely. Well, we're going to keep an eye on these propositions tonight as it moves through. We're also watching several other cities and some of the measures on their ballot. I want to take you back over to our monitor here. We are going to check in with our reporter, Destiny Fuller, but I want to tell you a little bit about this Texas State House race that we're looking at now. This is District
that's a pickup
80.
for
Former
This
mayor
is,
of
in
Uvalde.
the
yeah.
Uvalde
He-
area.
and that
so
was
we
the
have Don
King's
McLaughlin
seat.
and Cecilia Castellano. If Don McLaughlin looks familiar, it's because he was all over our airwaves after the Robb Elementary School shooting in 2022. He was the mayor of Uvalde at the time, now running for this seat that was occupied by Tracy King, who is not running. So now we have these two candidates. And Cecilia Castellano, we were telling you a little bit earlier about some of the raids that we saw from the Election Integrity Unit at the Texas Attorney General's office, and her campaign was involved in some of those raids. There were officials that were sent to investigate surrounding her campaign, so a lot of eyes have been on this one. We have Destiny Fuller in Uvalde tonight with the McLaughlin campaign. Destiny, what are you hearing? What is the mood there in Uvalde? And I also would love for you to lay out for people how they do their election results, because it's very unique compared to what we see in other cities.
Yeah, that's right, Jordan. Right now, it's still a little bit light out here as people are wrapping up. The polls closed at 7. Some people are still starting to trickle in. When we first got here, we are in downtown Uvalde, right in front of the local newspaper, which is the Uvalde News Leader. There was no one here. Now people are slowly starting to roll in. I'm going to step out of the way so Everett can show you some of the things going on behind us. There's a little bit of a crowd gathering right in front of the Uvalde News Leader, and they've also got treats and goodies. But if we focus on these little whiteboards that you see right here, that's exactly what Jordan was talking about. They are going to be keeping up with the totals of all of the votes that come in tonight the old-fashioned way. Someone is going to stand in front of those whiteboards as the results come in tonight, and they're going to fill out each and every one of those boxes. Each box is for a specific precinct, and then the row is for the corresponding race. At the end of the night, they'll tally them up, and they will have a hand tally of some of those races. And of course, the reason why we are here is to catch up with Mr. Don McLaughlin himself, and he is going to tell us a little bit about his expectations for this race, what campaigning has looked like for him so far. We also plan on catching up with Cecilia Castellano. She is at a private celebration. We haven't been able to catch up with her in person, but we do plan to talk to her tonight about her outlook as well. Jordan, we'll talk to you in just a little bit. I'm going to send it back.
Destiny, thank you. And I wanted you all to see that, because where else are you going to see election results coming in on a whiteboard like that? We're over here checking our computers and checking our phones. But in Uvalde, it's a tradition. They go and they look at these whiteboards. We've covered several elections there now, and a lot of people come out to see those results come in. Every election, I think that is so cool to see. I want to bring Professor Sepulveda back in. What do you make of this race and the impact that it could have on Texas? Tracy King held this seat for so long. It's got Uvalde, it's got the border. There's a little bit of everything here.
It's obviously a very interesting district, but you can see with the early numbers kind of where it's kind of potentially playing itself out. In that sense, probably not going to change the legislature much, but obviously just a different voice, a different kind of game, but also partly because of its little physical location, really going to be able to play itself into some of the key issues that folks are talking about.
Absolutely. And walk us through some of those early results. What are we seeing for HD 80 so far?
They look, we're seeing right now is kind of a huge, and now, right now I don't see percentages here, right? So we'll have to kind of look at it, but in terms of how much of the vote is in, but it's looking right now like just a huge lead right now in the early stages.
Right, for Mayor McLaughlin.
Yeah.
So we're going to continue checking in on that over the course of the evening as well. I want to bring in our panel if they're willing to. So this is a district that includes Uvalde. Obviously, over the course of the last few years, we saw the mass shooting at Robb Elementary, the mayor now running for this House seat. Is that something that we see fairly often if there is a tragedy like that or a headline-making event in a district that some of those leaders then seek bigger roles?
That we help Republicans that are they're pro-free enterprise. They're not far right. They don't get involved in social issues, but so we watch the races all across the state. This one is again significant, as the professor pointed out, because of it reaches, and as your map showed, it reaches and goes down to the border. So huge Hispanic border area population, which is significant for the way the whole state's laid out politically, with the Republican growth that's also occurring between here and the Valley, with the pickups we had with the Representative Lopez down in the Valley, Ryan Guillen in Floresville that goes down to the Valley. And so it's part of the trend of Hispanic supporting more conservative candidates that we've seen over the last two cycles. And it is a +1 seat for the Republicans as well.
I know both of these candidates. Cecilia Castellano is a very, very effective advocate for small business. She runs a small business with her husband, and she's been a major force in rethinking the procurement strategies for all of the public agencies in our region. She's a very charismatic and attractive candidate. I also know the mayor. I was in Uvalde shortly after the shooting there, and he got pretty high marks from everybody in the community for the kind of leadership that he provided. And it doesn't surprise me that, given the makeup of the district and the lean toward conservatism, that he would have been an attractive and popular figure. And he's running ahead in these early returns. Basically, a good man who did his very best in an incredibly difficult situation, which was the school shootings in Uvalde.
And he also has a unique knack. He's not Hispanic, but he has a very good way of communicating and embracing all the communities between Uvalde and to the border.
If you go back and you start looking again, I'm going to talk about redistricting and what happens. Tracy King was really an exception to the rule, and his voting record was one of conservative, moderate. Yeah. And he probably would have survived, but I don't know how much longer, to be honest with you, the way things get redrawn all the time. And the mayor was very popular, and he handled the horrible situation in the best possible terms, disappointed very few people in his performance. So I think it'd be almost a natural fit for a Republican to have taken that seat. In my opinion, it was a Republican seat. Even this last 2 years ago, when King still was good and survived.
If he wanted to run again, he would have won.
I think he would have won, just because he was such a, respected, liked, and he listened and all that. But it's a Republican district, and I think the mayor, like I said, was pretty popular to begin with. You have a tragedy of that dimension, and you handle it well, and you still seek a higher office. that's a good thing.
And he got a lot of press at that time. He was on the television a lot throughout the region. Everybody was glued to the TV, and he seemed like a person who was trying to create, some opportunity for the families that were impacted. He was trying to get money to help them individually with help for their children who were injured, people who had funeral expenses, and I think people looked to him as like one of the adult voices in the room when there was utter chaos around him.
Absolutely, and one of the things that is noteworthy to us as journalists and as reporters, especially here in San Antonio, because we were out there from day one. I was one of the first people to get to Robb Elementary that day, and from the day that it happened, the mayor was always one of the people that was calling for transparency. He wanted every police department to release their video and their documents. He has been calling for that the entire time and is still calling for that. I also want to note, we actually have a district here in Texas too. This one, there we go. Rhonda Hart is also running for U.S. Congress. Her daughter was killed in the Santa Fe school shooting back in 2018. She also is seeking office now. A lot of her platform is based around gun laws and things like that after that event. So we are seeing this in a couple different races here in Texas.
Well, and we just came through a Senate primary in which Senator Gutierrez from San Antonio was one of the candidates against Colin Allred, and his whole campaign was Uvalde and the gun situation.
Absolutely. So we're going to circle back on that race. I want to take you now to a race that we are closely watching here in San Antonio, and that is the Tony Gonzalez race. As you can see, a lot of border in this district, specifically District 23. Tony Gonzalez right now with the early voting numbers, it looks like we've got about 41% reporting. He is leading with 59%. 40.5% for Santos Limon. Our Taylor Whartonby is out tonight covering this race. Obviously, immigration, one of the key issues here. Taylor, what are you hearing from both sides so far about how this race is going?
Hey, Jordan. So I'm currently at the Cowboy Dance Hall. This is the Democratic Watch Party for Santos Limon and other Democrats here. I'm joined with Juan, who lives in the 23rd District. Tell me, what are your thoughts about
If you
Santos?
guys weren't here tonight, you'd be at that
Santos
event.
Limon is out there talking
Right there.
to a lot of the communities.
Serving beer.
It's a big district, I believe 29 counties, and just trying to listen to our concerns early on. I know he talked to a lot of community leaders in my hometown, so hopefully there'll be a good victory tonight. So I'm looking forward to a Congressman Limon in the future.
And what are your thoughts of this being his first race? And also, he's a civil engineer.
Well, first-time candidate. I mean, you're going out there. You're talking to a lot of the political folks out there that understand the landscape, and just listening to those folks, and listening to the concern of the people. I think that's what's going to make a successful candidate. And like I said, he did the work. Talking to a lot of the folks, at least in my community. I know that he went to other communities nearby, and just listening to those folks on the ground, I think that that's going to help him tonight.
And what do you think about the crowd here tonight?
Oh, it's a really great crowd. I've talked to a couple of folks that are on the way, and we're just kind of happy, and it's uplifting, and hopefully we get some more victories up and down the ballot. We're looking forward to a Democratic landslide.
Thank you, Juan. So I did reach out to Tony Gonzalez earlier today. He did decline an interview. They said they will provide a statement either tonight or tomorrow. We are still waiting on that, and we'll give you some updates. But for now, Jordan, back to you.
Taylor, thank you. I want to loop in Congressman Bonilla. You were District 23 once upon a time. What kind of changes have you seen in this district as things have continued over the years?
Well, it has changed. The boundaries have changed, and it's a little bit more favorable to a Republican. And it's interesting to note that before you put that up, I got to pay attention to politics. I didn't even remember the opponent's name in the general election because that opponent is really insignificant in this race. Tony didn't spend any money at all on television for the general election, or I don't think he spent much on mail either. He was sending emails out and some social media, but his battle was in the primary. And it's really, again, like Henry Cuellar was challenged by the radical left, Tony was challenged by the far right, and in this primary, and that was his race this year. So this is a slam dunk for Tony. I've known him since before he ran for office. He's a good guy, and a hell of a lot of Democrats out there also agree with that.
And I would say further, Henry, that if someone were writing a Profiles in Courage book like the one that President Kennedy wrote, Tony Gonzalez might well be in that book, because after Uvalde, he advocated as a conservative Republican for some adjustments to the gun laws, which were reasonable.
Yep.
Red flag and other things. For that, he got a primary opponent.
Yep.
And then there came several other issues during the time where he just took the centrist but reasonable stance, and he took a beating for it. They censured him in some meetings and such, and he just said, "Look, I'm a former Navy seaman. I know what's good for this country, in my opinion, and I'm going to stand up for it no matter who attacks me." And well, tonight he was rewarded by his constituents with a win.
And then he had also the state party that was targeting him as well, which is insane. That you have your own party, your own family. I always used to say you don't agree on everything in your own home, or your own place of business, or your place of worship. And some of these nuts on politics, whether it's on the right or the left, oh, you weren't with me on, there were 25 issues, and on one thing, number 25, I think you said something in committee, or you didn't vote the right way. And we're coming after you now.
Henry, please don't compare politics to home life or a house of worship. It's not that kind of a house. It is a house divided. But seriously, and Juan knows what I'm talking about right now. And we are suffering in this country now because of gerrymandering for political purposes, which only recently, in the last few years, has been sanctioned by the Supreme Court of the United States. In other words, a partisan legislature can redistrict all of the state and federal congressional districts, representative and state senator districts for political advantage, and it's not unconstitutional. And once that started, we see what's happening. You just heard some great praise of Tony Gonzalez. What did he win his primary by, 300 and something votes? I forget.
The runoff.
And the person that ran against him, the other Republican, his nickname was what, AK-47?
Right.
I mean, Juan knows what I'm talking about. But until we start figuring out how we get away where you get primaried out because you're a moderate, we're going to have issues.
And here's another thing about that primary. In a Republican runoff, I think the turnout for that runoff was like 5 or 6%. Do people even care anymore? Again, all of these issues that are happening are not all the fault of the candidates at all.
Oh, no.
Or the people running. It's about the people who don't demand better.
Well, and I want to pull you into, Professor Sepulveda. I hear that primary was quite difficult for Tony Gonzalez against Brandon Herrera, and you're right, his nickname was something of that nature.
Right.
Why do you think he faced such an uphill battle?
Well, I think it's exactly how they were just talking about right now. The real races, because of the gerrymandering, because of the way the districts have been drawn, the real races now are happening within the party itself, right? And so, and once again, you either have that, or we talked about earlier, or you have no opposition, right, when you're kind of coming into it. This is a district that is, like former Congressman Benito was saying, the lines have changed, but just a cycle or two ago, this was a competitive seat, right? You look at the Cook Political Report, Inside Elections, Sabato, all the national folks, all of them saw this tonight, exactly what our guests are saying, as a solid slam dunk for Congressman Gonzalez. And so, once again, the extremes that get pulled out on both sides lead to the kind of politics, and also, like we were saying, turning off voters and leading to really kind of low turnouts as well. So it's kind of in a strange way even easier to win closer races within your primaries, but almost nobody participating. Probably not a good recipe for us and for democracy.
Right, so we'll continue to keep an eye on that race, but right now Tony Gonzalez does have a healthy lead. I want to switch now. We have reporters in cities all over Texas watching some of those more local races. In Austin right now we have Walt Macaborski joining us. There are judges on the ballot, school board decisions, different propositions. Walt, what are you watching most closely tonight in Austin?
You know, we're obviously following all the local races, but you wake up this morning and we're in national headlines because Joe Rogan endorses Trump, and then you have Elon Musk flying out to Florida to watch election results with Trump. So all of a sudden, not only are we on the national map, the big races in Austin are the future of affordability. So the mayor's race is key, and the incumbent Mayor Kirk Watson, a strong lead tonight with 53% of the vote so far. You know, he was a mayor in the late 90s. He was then a state representative for about 17 years. He's the incumbent mayor, and he is doing very well tonight with 53% of the vote. You know, interesting, we thought Kathy Tobo, who was on the council, was going to be his biggest challenger, and she is actually in third tonight up against Carmen Yanez Polito with 20% of the vote, which is a great showing for her. We didn't really expect that, but two interesting propositions to talk about tonight. Austin ISD Proposition A. They're trying to get teachers raises, and they only can do that with a VATR, a voter-approved tax rate. So they look like they're going to get this passed and give raises to about 5,000 teachers. But it's a double-edged sword here, mainly because, you know, they're going to raise $171 million, but only get $41 million because of recapture. So a lot of voters were saying, why should I vote for this if 75% of my money is going to go back to other counties in the state for other school districts? But it looks like those, so far, the teachers are going to get their raise. But it's going to cost taxpayers about $420 on their tax bill. Also, they have another proposition, Proposition A, in the city of Austin that will go to affordable child care, and it looks like that is passing as well. So voters are adding money to their tax bill, but they're going to give teacher raises, and it looks like a lot of the employees in Austin will get some child care benefits, which will be great because we know child care is so expensive. Another interesting note, Williamson County, usually very strong Republican stronghold, and it looks like in the Senate race that they're voting for Colin Allred more so than Cruz, which is interesting. Williamson County, is it turning purple?
Now, Walt, you said so many interesting things. I came up with a million questions to ask you. I want to start with, you pointed out that Elon Musk is going to be at Mar-a-Lago watching with Donald Trump. The Texas Tribune is also reporting that our Attorney General Ken Paxton will be there, along with Agricultural Commissioner Sid Miller. Now, about those propositions for putting money toward teacher raises, a lot of districts across the state are putting things like this on the ballot. And at least here around in the San Antonio area, we're hearing a lot of kind of animosity for the State House for maybe not allocating all of that funding so that people have to go to ballot measures like this. Are you seeing that in Austin as well? What is the attitude toward the legislature and kind of the path that has led a lot of districts to do this?
A lot of angry voters. You know, they want our teachers to have raises, and they want to keep the money in Austin. They're raising $171 million if this passes tonight, but only $41 million stays here. So the big debate for everybody at the ballot box was, is it worth it that I'm sending my tax money around the state? 75% won't even stay here, but it looks like the teachers are going to get their raises, but that's a problem. So I think there's going to be a lot of lobbying at the state legislature to say, hey, keep our money local, keep our money for our teachers, invest in the teachers, the programs, and make sure our education system keeps that money. So you're exactly right, Jordan, a lot of angst there. But you were talking about Rogan. You know, we were looking at polling places throughout Austin and in Travis County, and we went to the University of Texas. There was sometimes a 2-hour wait for students and young people to go and vote. That was basically the biggest polling spot for students and young people to go at the University of Texas. And they were waiting 2 hours to do it. Was that part of the Joe Rogan effect, or was it just engaged students wanting to vote? That'll be something interesting to see.
Absolutely. Walt, thank you so much. I know you have another cut-in coming up here in a couple minutes, so thank you so much for your time tonight. Professor Sepulveda, what Walt was just saying is right up your alley with young people voting. Is it the Joe Rogan effect? You work with young people all day, every day. What kinds of reactions are you seeing from them about this election and from endorsements like Joe Rogan and Taylor Swift and all these people that young people typically would look up to?
Yeah, and like we were mentioning earlier, there's obviously a new set of influencers, right? A new set of folks that young folks are looking up to and kind of learning, taking their news, taking their kind of direction from them. it's going to be interesting to see if this actually, the challenge obviously is young people usually don't turn out in large numbers. And because we're not a battleground state, you didn't see that same kind of resources. When we were on the Obama campaign in '08, I remember we made it happen, but it was 4 times more expensive to kind of get a young voter or a less frequent voter to kind of show up than someone who was kind of a more consistent voter. And the other thing that you're seeing right now is that they traditionally tend to be more progressive when they're younger. So you're also seeing this interesting, we were talking about the gender gap in the presidential race at the top of the ticket, particularly with women and men. But what's interesting is that we're seeing from the polling from the Institute of Politics at Harvard that does the best youth polling, that young men are not as progressive as they typically are in past cycles. And so if you have that combination, that's obviously something that the former president is looking to kind of build upon. So if somehow he can get a Rogan to be that influencer, get him to show up and have folks who are a little bit less progressive than they had been in the past, then it's really interesting thing we saw in the data recently was at the top of the ticket in kind of the more senior voters, you had a percentage of the women who were saying, I may not want to tell my husband that I'm voting for Kamala Harris. You have the opposite going down for the young voters, where you have young men saying, I'm not sure I want to tell my girlfriend that I'm potentially voting for Trump, right?
That
There's
so
this interesting kind of piece that's going on. That's usually the opposite of what happens for young voters, but we'll have to see tonight if they actually show up.
And from the university standpoint as well, too, is this something that will be studied in the future? After tonight is over and after all these numbers come in, is this something that people will be looking into?
Yes, right. It's something that we're all very interested in. Like I mentioned, the Institute of Politics at Harvard is kind of the leader in the country. So they do the best. They have a center that's really kind of looking specifically at the youth vote. So they will do a deeper dive afterwards to kind of really see all the kind of cuts to see whether this stuff is really happening or not tonight.
Wow.
Yeah.
And the podcast effect, I don't know if that's what they call it, it's what I'm calling it. We saw both major presidential candidates go on pretty high profile podcasts for this election cycle. Have we seen anything like that in previous presidential races?
So it's yes and no, right? So you've seen this in the sense that campaigns that are smart are going to go to where the voters are. So you've seen campaigns get in trouble in the past where it was like, I'm going to go to places where I think they should be. You should be reading these papers and you should be reading these magazines. The smart campaigns are going to go to where folks are actually getting their information. And so in that sense, this is just new tools to kind of carry that out. But there's no doubt that the explosion in the past couple cycles, it was blogs a while back, right? And kind of, but now to have these podcasts that really have such a, we talked about earlier, huge scale. And the question is, how does that kind of go hand in hand with also what we were seeing with a lot of the celebrity endorsements? Taylor Swift, Beyonce, all of those kind of things, Kid Rock on the Trump side. Do those things really matter or not? That's something we're going to kind of continue to look at as well.
Absolutely. I want to continue this conversation, but my producers are saying that we have got Representative John Lujan, the incumbent, and one of our close races here in Bexar County. We're going to take that live right now so you can kind of hear that Q&A.
We're up by a couple thousand, I think, almost 2,000 votes. So do you think that that's a good sign of things to come for tonight, or what do you think of that?
Well, I don't know, man. I walk in here and we have a 2,000 vote lead and everybody's cheering and they're all happy and I'm not because I'm looking at the numbers, right? So we can be happy right now. We might be sad in an hour or two, right? So I don't know, but I guess to start off, you always want to start off with a lead, and we took off running and we got a couple thousand vote lead, and let's see how that holds for the rest of the night. We'll find out.
You mentioned the contentiousness of this. A little bit of that comes on the school voucher part of this. Obviously, you voted in favor of them in the last legislative session. Governor Abbott backed you a lot of the reason because of that. Your opponent on the other side is staunchly against them. So why do you think that's such a contentious issue?
I think it's a contentious issue, and it's sad. I think it's made that way because they want to have a big fight, right? And that's not really the way we need to look at it. What we need to look at it is we're going to have, I'm all for parental choice. Now, what does that look like? That to me is the important thing. How do we rate the schools? How do we determine how the money follows the child? Those are the things that we're going to be working out. The ones that we had planned that didn't get passed, I think were solid proposals that we're going to fully fund our schools and still offer opportunity for parental choice. And I think we can do the two with our budget, but we have to be willing to invest those dollars, and I think we are. We're going to get those invested.
For you, does it depend on how the bill looks, or is it I'm going to vote yes on school choice?
No, mine is all about the bill because I want to make sure that when if you're going to have true parental choice, you've got to rate everything the same, whether it's public school, private school. If we start rating them and putting mandates on certain things and it's unfair, then then you're not having parental choice. I want it across the board fair, and then let the parents choose and make the decision.
I know I'm asking you not to predict, but maybe let me talk to 10:30 p.m. Lujan that just won the election. If you win the election tonight, what does that mean for District 118?
You know,
No,
what it means for District 118 is that we're going to have a mandate for workforce development, economic development. That's big in our area. Our community, East Bexar County, Northeast, South, we're poised to grow. And we just got JCB here in South Bexar County. I worked with Governor Abbott's office on that. I worked with our county commissioner, Peter Sakai, our county judge, Peter Sakai, worked with him real hard on that, bringing that. Jobs and workforce readiness is what's really big, and that's the future of our area. The other big thing for me is public safety. The border really scares me. As an elected official, I was able to go to the border, and there's a lot of fear in my heart for what's going on, and we need to fix that.
And if in a couple of hours we see that Ms. Carranza has won and she will be taking over this seat, how will you look back at this campaign and at this journey as representative for District 118?
Number one, I'd be really proud. And not only that, right now in this interim, I have a lot of juvenile justice legislation, some transportation things, some vaping things, some fentanyl stuff that we're already writing up now since I'm the incumbent and I know what I know. We've got a lot of bills. I will package all that and I will take that to Carranza and I will work with her and show her what we have, and hopefully she will carry the torch with that. I've always been like that. I'm not just saying that to be a nice guy. That's what I do, and I would do that because it would benefit our community.
This is one of the tightest races, expected to be within a couple of hundred votes coming into today.
Right.
Why do you think it's that close?
Man, I hate to say negativity, but negativity plays a big factor in this. And when you start scaring people with lies and things, it's really, really sad. What I seen out in the polling side, some people that said they didn't vote for me, and then it came out and we talked about it. Oh, I didn't know that. I thought you wanted to force women to have babies that have been raped. I thought you wanted this. And that's sad, man. And I think that makes it closer. The other thing is this district is a 52% Democrat district. I don't go running vote Republican. I go, man, how do we better our community? And everybody knows that. I work well with my colleagues across the aisle because I do what's right. I'm a man of faith, and I cry out to God for wisdom, and then I want to be able to be strong enough to do the wise things that we need to get done.
You've mentioned the hate that came along with the comments that you made on the radio about a hypothetical daughter and wanting her to be carry a baby to term no matter what. Why do you think those got taken maybe out of context or got kind of blown up on the other side? And what do you have to say about
Well, the sad thing is that's politics, but man, that's the sad thing. We shouldn't have it like that. Using the immediate headline was John Lujan wants to force women. I never even used the word force. I said I would want to have the baby, but we have a family structure that could support that. But I couldn't answer for other families that might not have that support structure. So that's why I've always been pro-life, with the exceptions of rape, incest, or life of the mother. And they take one piece of that, add some more to that, and man, run a whole campaign on it. And that's sad, because that's not me. And the people that are here that know that's not me, they spread the word, but it made it tough. And the bad thing is, if something like that wins, then people kind of tend to do those things to win versus doing the right thing, and that's sad.
That's all I got for you. Anything else you'd like to add?
No, I'm excited about tonight. Let's see what happens. We can check back in a couple hours, see how I feel.
I'm sure we will. Thank you so much. Appreciate you.
All right, that is Matt Roy live with Representative John Lujan, the incumbent right now. I want to touch back on something that Walt Macaborski was telling us, an interesting trend here in Williamson County, almost 91% reporting. We are seeing 49.7% for Colin Allred and 48.1% for Ted Cruz. Professor Sepulveda, what do we make of these numbers and this tilt, especially in Williamson County?
No, and that's exactly what we were talking about earlier today. I was really curious if there was going to be any chance for Colin Allred to pull this off. We're going to be looking at places like Williamson. We'll want to see what's happening in Tarrant a little bit later as well too. But you can see here, right, that this kind of puts him in contention, right? We know the numbers are going to be tough, so I've told folks, if Colin Allred can lose within single digits, that's a victory, right? We think about Beto in his last gubernatorial race is still losing by double digits at 11 points. Obviously, you want to win, but if there's any shot for him to win, it's going to take something like we're seeing right here in Williamson. We're going to have to see what happens in Tarrant and some other places, but that's obviously a good sign for the Allred campaign.
Right. All right. For Javier and my team, let's take this full so we can click through some of these counties and see. Never mind, we cannot take this full. All right. In that case, we are going to go national for a second. We are going to check in and see how we're doing on the Electoral College for our presidential race right now. I need this to reset for me. There we go. All right. For my panel, for my experts, this is what we're looking at right now. Right now, former President
Michigan?
Donald Trump at 120
No, that's not gonna be
Electoral
right.
College votes, 99 for Vice President Kamala Harris. Professor Sepulveda, I'm going to start with you.
That can't
What
be
do you
right,
think
'cause
about this so far? Now, not all of these are 100% called. Some of these are the way that they're leaning according to the Associated Press. But what are we thinking about this so far as we're looking at the vote totals?
Yeah, so I think that's an important thing for folks to understand with
Yes.
this map. So the 120.99 is basically matching in the states that are not the battlegrounds of what we thought was going to happen.
Right.
So if you look about here, you'll see Michigan, you'll see Pennsylvania. Those are not done. You'll see North
Yes.
Carolina, Georgia. Now, when we look to see kind of, that shows you where the lead is right now. Those things aren't done. Those are not included in the 120 to 99.
Right.
That would be a very different game. So far, the 120.99 is telling us it's happening what we thought would happen in the non-battleground states. What's going to be interesting as we kind of delve deeper into getting the results from some of these states, like we mentioned before. Pennsylvania is going to be a little bit later. Georgia, North Carolina tend to be a little bit earlier, so it'll be interesting to see where we are in terms of percentages. And I think that's where we're going to get to the really interesting stuff.
Absolutely. I'm going to toss it over to my panel now. So some of these states are still leaning. Texas has not been officially called yet. Florida, it appears, has been called for Donald Trump. Same with Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Arkansas, Oklahoma, North and South Dakota. Right now we're seeing New York called for VP Harris. Same with Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, New Jersey. Are there any surprises on this board that you see right now, or any states that you're watching closely over the next few hours to see which way this is going to lean?
Jordan, nothing is out of what was projected with respect to what would be red and what would be blue, which, as I recall, if you looked at all of those but the 7, it ended up with something like 219 for Harris and 226 for Trump, something like that. And so what has to happen this evening is the allocation of those 7. Now, it looks like Georgia is the only one where there's enough of a count to see a trend, and Trump is up. I wouldn't be surprised if within the next few hours they would call Georgia for Trump. North Carolina, which is supposed to be a toss-up, there also seems to be something of a lead for Trump. On the other hand, Harris is leading in all of the blue wall in Michigan and Wisconsin and Pennsylvania for now, but they're very, very close leads. So until something happens in those 7 that's actually callable, right now it's still the tight race that everybody expected. Now there's one aberration that I noticed in the last map that I saw, and that was Virginia, which is counted generally in the blue, is right now the Trump leading. If that were to happen, it changes the whole evening, because there will be no way to make that up, even with the blue wall.
And also the margin in Georgia is a little surprising. It's
As
not
large
just 1
as
or
it
2
is.
points.
Yeah.
But I know it's early, but it is a bit of a surprise to see in
Yeah.
the teens.
Yeah.
Yeah, and now in Georgia, I just got something from a friend, because we can't keep up so we're hoping that friends will text us. But they were saying that Fulton County, which is very Democratic, and because of the bomb threats, everything was delayed and everything else. But there are a lot of votes still in Georgia. But I'm not even counting on Georgia. I think what Henry and I were talking about is Virginia. The Democrats cannot lose Virginia.
No.
Put it that way. You got to take the blue wall, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Michigan. Yes, you take those, but you can't lose Virginia. If you do, then we start looking at North Carolina, right?
Or Nevada.
Well, Nevada doesn't have as many. Yeah,
Arizona. It's a Nevada-Arizona combination.
Yeah, and Arizona to me is going to be really hard. But North Carolina then becomes central to us. Right now, as a Democrat, I just want to take the blue wall and then start worrying about where we're going to make it up if we lose something that we should have had it, like Virginia.
Now the thing about Virginia is it depends where the vote is from.
Yeah.
If it's from Western Virginia and Southern Virginia, it can be red. But you get into the Washington suburbs, and those are blue, and they generally come a little bit later. So maybe I've noticed something that is meaningless because we don't know where the vote is coming from.
It was early, but it was a surprise.
Yeah, but surprise.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just as a reminder, kind of if everything plays out the way it should in the non-battleground states, Vice President Harris will start with 226. Former President Trump will start at 219.
That's the numbers I gave. I just had them inverted a little bit ago.
So that's kind of the starting point, right? And I think you're right, though. I think typically that kind of D.C., that Northern Virginia area usually comes in a little bit later. So we'll have to see, but I wouldn't be surprised if that's kind of what's going on with Virginia right now.
Right.
We are going to continue checking in on this. That was the AP map that you're looking at. It's got kind of the lighter colors if states are leaning one way but not fully colored yet. So we are going to keep an eye on that, especially as these totals continue coming in. I want to take you now to Marisa Mendoza here in Bexar County. Commissioner Grant Moody declaring victory. We're hearing in our county commissioner race. I'm going to take you to her live right now so she can fill us in on what's going on there. Hi, Marisa.
Hi, Jordan. That's exactly right. Commissioner Moody is with me. He declared victory about 5 minutes ago. He is very confident with a very different mood from what it was in 2022 when it was a narrower lead. Joining me is Commissioner Moody. Commissioner Moody, great night for you tonight. Why did you feel that it was important to declare victory so early on?
Well, I mean, we were just looking at the early voting results, and we're up 10 points, which we're really pleased with. We're really excited about. And ultimately, right now with Texas, you got 75-80% of the vote is coming in early. So really, it's a mathematical impossibility at this point that the outcome would be changed. So we just wanted to go ahead and be able to share that with our supporters here tonight, and be able to come out and talk about it. And again, really excited about it. I just think that it's been a good night for us, and it's based on all the hard work that we put in over the last 2 years.
Precinct 3 has always leaned conservative. You've really leaned into being the conservative voice on Commissioner's Court. You focused on responsible fiscal management, infrastructure, and law enforcement. Talk about a few of those things that you've managed to do on your time on Commissioner's Court.
Yeah, no, those have been our priorities from day one. Public safety has been our top priority, and we've been able to add 136 law enforcement officers over the last 2 years. That was a huge victory. It's really shifted the narrative around public safety in Bexar County and the city of San Antonio, and we're really excited about that. We've also been focused on property taxes and trying to make sure that we use our tax dollars wisely, eliminate inefficiencies and redundancies in county and city government wherever possible. And ultimately, we got a 20% homestead exemption for Bexar County taxpayers with the hospital district. We believe that's the largest Bexar County tax cut ever, and we're really proud of that.
And you were really proud of your staff that supported you, your family that's here to support you. Tell us a little bit about the other folks that are here as well.
Yeah, so we have my family's here tonight, my office staff, my campaign staff. We also have just a bunch of supporters over the last 2 years, folks who've supported our campaign financially, folks who've knocked on doors for us, folks who were at the polls today holding the Grant Moody sign or wearing a Grant Moody t-shirt, just so many friends and supporters of what we've accomplished and what we've done. And, our work wouldn't be possible without all of them. And so I'm just really grateful to be surrounded by so many great people who are so committed to this cause and helping us get this done.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Jordan, back to you in the studio.
Marisa, thank you. So while we were in that interview, I want to let you know the Associated Press has not called Texas one way or the other yet. Obviously, we are expecting, at least in the presidential race, for Texas to be red. Governor Greg Abbott, though, has tweeted, "Congratulations to President Donald Trump and J.D. Vance on their overwhelming victory in Texas. Texans have spoken. They want strong conservative leaders who will prioritize economic growth and securing our border." That's a quote from Governor Greg Abbott via Twitter. I want to bring our panel back in now. The border has been such a hot topic, not just here in Texas, but in races across the country in this election. How do you think that's going to influence what happens, not just in the presidential race, but in all of the races that we're seeing in terms of the Senate, the House, and in races across the country?
It's going to have huge impact, and this is one thing where you have to give the former president credit. He took an issue that a few cycles ago was not showing up anywhere in the top of the list, and has made it one of the top 2 issues in the country. And like we were saying earlier, everyone else, all the other, you see so many Republican candidates jumping on board, and so they've, once again, not unlike we were talking earlier about transgender issues, to be able to take immigration and use it from a notion of fear and scaring folks has been a very successful tactic, right? So we'll have to kind of see how it plays itself out, but at least that's how it's set itself up across the country tonight.
Right, and we at our station are down at the border all the time. We were there last December when there were thousands of people coming across, and we've been there over the course of the last year, and it has not looked like that, at least in the cities that we have been in, where there are thousands of people coming across. Texas has done a lot of fortification along our border as well, with razor wire, shipping containers, things like that, but we're not seeing the mass crossings that we did. And the reason for that depends on who you ask. Some people say that it is what the state of Texas is doing. Other people point to immigration enforcement in Mexico. Other people point to the executive action taken by the Biden administration. So for our experts, you all have lived in Texas for a very long time. We have former congressmen over there. How big of an issue was the border when you were campaigning and running and in office compared to what we're seeing right now?
Well, I had in my district 700 miles of the border, and so we were on the front lines. It was a different time then, though. It was many years ago. In the last handful of years, it's become a nightmare, and we were talking amongst ourselves earlier, and on the front line in the Hispanic communities, they are absolutely for border security, and they do not like seeing what's happening in those areas, which probably has a tendency to also dovetail into a little more support for those who are for border security. Like Henry Cuellar is a strong supporter of border security. They don't believe in sanctuary cities, and they believe in following the law and all of that. But then again, because governors in Texas, our governor started shipping the illegals to the big cities, it then became more of a national issue. And it's impacting New York big time. It's impacting Chicago and other cities where they were bussed and flown. And also the Florida governor helped do that as well. So that became much more than just a regional issue here in Texas and along the border.
Yeah. But if you think of how former President Trump made this an issue by demanding, instructing, and getting obedient members of the Republican Party, and this is where I get pretty partisan, to defeat a bipartisan bill in the Senate that would have provided more resources to secure our border, whether it's drugs or illegal entry, all of that. We had a bill. Would it have passed in the House? To be honest with you, that would have been almost an impossibility too. But it was at the urging of President Trump, so you could continue giving life to this issue when there is an answer. Congress has not fulfilled its duty and responsibility to come out with comprehensive immigration reform. Henry and I always talked about it. We disagreed on certain parts, but we knew that we needed it. Now, I'll tell you where they love an open border. It's called trade and NAFTA and the dependency that we have on Mexico and what they have on us economically. We ignore all that at our own risk, by the way. And so if President Trump gets elected, my prediction is there'll be no mass deportation. I think we do need to do something about the basis to seek asylum, where you just can cross and present yourself as a matter of legal right to come across the border, turn yourself in, and simply say, I'm seeking asylum. Now give me a hearing and maybe even a lawyer, and we're inundated. We don't do anything to streamline the process or to make it more difficult for people just to say it's economic hardship. That does not qualify for asylum in the United States of America. And so, there's so much blame to go around, but if it's getting you votes and you continue to, just fan those flames and say people are being replaced, displaced, they're taking your jobs, and they're all criminals, by the way, which is contrary to every study out there. We all know that. But it doesn't matter because it still sells. And it is speaking again to the fears and insecurities of every human being. We could get elected to any office if that was just our platform, and we never worked, and we never compromised, and never negotiated.
So this was not an issue in Charlie's decision for who to vote for this year, then?
Oh, I just, it is probably one of the more shameful, in my day job, we represent employers, and a lot of regulation, a lot of rules, and the first order of business for a lawyer to their client is to say, simply comply with those regulations and such. And when you do, we can have economic growth. We can have individuals that come here on a temporary basis, not to become citizens and such. But we just don't do this in Congress, and no one demands it of their member of Congress. That's the most amazing thing. Maybe the Chamber of Commerce once in a while, Henry, but we never had constituents say, you know, Henry and Charlie, we want to have comprehensive immigration reform. You know, never. They never understood how it impacts their daily lives.
There's no doubt, if you look at the what people are saying in the exit polls and what we've seen in the lead up to the election day, that immigration has been one of the premier issues in this campaign, without a doubt. And what was once a issue for the 4 border states has become an issue everywhere that migrants have been sent or have gone. So it's it would be an issue in the next mayor's race in New York City at the rate that it's going. The only other issue that has been raised to that level in this campaign is the economy. And that's been done very skillfully because, frankly, the economy is pretty solid at the moment. The Federal Reserve did a masterful job of threading the needle and bringing down, or rather raising interest rates to kill inflation without bringing on a recession. So here we are with jobs being created, interest rates coming down, no recession, and yet people are voting in this election on the basis of what they feel is a bad economy for them.
Because of the prices. They're still higher.
It's because some prices, gasoline and eggs and milk and some basics are still high. So anyway, it's in the context of the conversation we were having earlier about how you do politics nowadays, finding that issue that you can weaponize and then working it hard. And I think it's been done very well this year so that we have the tight election that we do.
Definitely. We'll continue circling back on that. I'm sure as we hear from candidates as the night goes on as well, the border is something that a lot of them will bring up all across Texas. I want to turn now. There are some very big issues on the ballot in Amarillo. It's something that our sister station has been covering extensively. There are city charter changes, council term limits, and then the one that I think most people's eyes are on, making Amarillo a sanctuary city for the unborn. We've got David Bradley with us in Amarillo tonight. David, walk us through some of these proposals that voters are considering.
The proposition to establish Amarillo as a sanctuary city for the unborn is the one that has drawn the most attention. We got here because it came to the ballot through an initiative petition. There was a proposal from a man named Mark Lee Dixon, who's been making a tour across Texas and has had some success in having city councils establish this. Effectively, what it is an anti-abortion trafficking bill. It's very similar to the state law that's already in place in terms of being enforced by civil lawsuits, but it would prohibit travel through Amarillo or giving travel through Amarillo to get to a site for an abortion. And it had been brought to the city council for the city council to try to create their own ordinance. However, the council, which is 4 members and the mayor, all white male, all very ardently pro-life and conservative, among the 5, they were not able to come up with an ordinance that they could all agree on. And there were several meetings with City Council, with public meetings that lasted several hours over several weeks, passionate on both sides with the public sounding off, and they couldn't come up with a solution. So then the group that was behind it put a petition together, and that's what brought it to the ballot. So we really weren't sure how it was going to go, because there was, even though Amarillo and Texas Panhandle at large is extraordinarily red, there were many that objected to it, including Mayor Cole Stanley here in Amarillo, that just felt, one, that it was an example of government overreach, and two, that it was duplicative of the state law that is already in place. We don't have the final numbers in just yet, but the most recent ones that we do have show that it looks like it's going to be rejected. The last numbers I saw had it 58% against, 42% for, which was a little bit of a surprise, simply because this is a highly conservative area, and at first blush you would think that this would be something that would probably pass. Like I mentioned, some of the other cities, Lubbock, I believe Odessa, San Angelo, they have adopted these sanctuary cities, but at this point it looks like it'll take a miracle for that to be reversed. So we're believing that the sanctuary city ordinance for the unborn is just not going to pass in Amarillo.
And David, as part of this ordinance, is there an enforcement arm of this? Like, is this something that the Amarillo police or county deputies would be involved with if this does pass?
No, it's similar to the state law in that it would only be enforced through civil lawsuits. So, for example, and the examples that have been laid out when the state law was coming into play, it was simply, if I ran across somebody that I knew was wanting an abortion, and I knew that this person got into a car with somebody and they drove to New Mexico to get the procedure done, then I would, as a private citizen, be empowered to file a civil lawsuit against the person who was aiding and abetting getting a young woman to, or any woman to, get an abortion. And so that was another very dangerous aspect that we heard some of the people talk about during open council meetings and public forums, that they felt this kind of an ordinance would be divisive in the city, and that it would turn into neighbors that were snooping on one another and potentially putting people at odds over one another. There was also a general objection on the part of Mayor Cole Stanley, who again is clearly anti-abortion. He's pro-life. Very conservative, but he was concerned about whether it would have the legal standing to actually stand up in court. And so he was very reluctant to pass it just on behalf of the council, because he didn't believe that once this gets put into the canon of laws for the city of Amarillo, there would likely be some type of a legal challenge down the road that would then the city would have to get themselves involved in defending this ordinance that they have. So like I said, we still have a few votes to count, but it looks like that it will go down to defeat here in Amarillo. You had mentioned earlier some of the other things that we did have on the ballot. One was a proposition to change the length of the size of the city council. Currently there are 4 city council members and the mayor. This proposition would expand the size of the council to 6. Now, the background to this was when it originally was drawn up by the Charter Committee in Amarillo to review these kind of things, they were also looking at changing Amarillo's structure, which right now all of the council people and the mayor are elected at large. And so the expansion of the council would then change it to what they call single member districts, where each member of the council would be elected by people in a geographic area, which is what we have with county commissioners, which is what we have with the state representatives. But on the way to the ballot box, those additional provisions were stripped away. So the only thing that this ballot would do would be to expand the size of the council from 4 members to 6. Well, in the last couple of weeks, we started getting an influx of television ads of people really objecting to this expansion of the city council. A couple of former mayors were involved, saying they felt that it was a bad thing for Amarillo. And it was really hard for me and some of the other people trying to kind of connect the dots as to why they thought it was bad. But They did not like the fact that the council was going to get bigger. I was surprised to see that it looks like that is also going to go down to defeat. So it looks like Amarillo will go ahead and stay with a 4-member council unless some pockets of votes come in that will flip things around, but it looks like that council will stay at 4. You also mentioned there about the term size. Right now the council serves 2-year terms. What this would have done would have been, this other proposal, Prop D, would have expanded the terms to 4 years in length rather than 2, because as it is right now, every 2 years the entire council rolls over. So they would expand it to a 4-year term and then stagger the terms, so only half the council would be up for election every 2 years. But that also appears to be going down. So, I mean, a short answer to the situation, at least for these questions, Amarillo's not really on board with wanting to change with the status quo, with the things way the things are here with the Amarillo City Council.
Well, David Bradley, thank you so much for joining us on the Your Voice, Your Vote live stream. We appreciate it. We will check back in with those Amarillo results here in a little bit. I want to circle us back to the abortion measure that is on the ballot in Amarillo. This is something else that we've been seeing popping up in lots of ads across Texas and across the country from the campaign side. Is that similar to some of the other kind of hot button issues that we're seeing pop up? Is, you know, it is something that gets everybody talking, and it can be a very divisive thing.
So yes, right. This is another example of what we're seeing here in Texas that's playing out nationally, and we'll see it again playing out in a couple of the battleground states in Arizona and Nevada as well tonight too. So once again, depending on the side you're kind of taking in here, but once again seeing this is another one of those. It's a social issue. It's kind of an emotional issue, and it's one that people have a real definite stance on where they are, and you're seeing playing out from the local to the presidential level in terms of what it means.
All right, I am being told by some of our producers here, Fox News is calling our Texas Senate race for Ted Cruz. So we are checking in on that. Obviously, all of the networks have different ways that they go about calling these races. AP calls them as well, but we did want to let you know that. Again, Fox News is calling our Texas Senate race for Ted Cruz. We'd been talking a little bit earlier about how a lot of polling was saying that these were going to be razor thin margins, that this was going to be very close. I'll be interested to see if that's what we are seeing right now. I'll check on our map in just a second. But for a lot of people, I know that we had talked about this with the panel earlier as well. It wasn't a big surprise if Ted Cruz were to come out on top of this.
Yeah, I mean, it's like we talked about before. Everything was almost perfect for Bethel last time, and for him to overperform and still be down by 2.6, and with things not perfect this time around, I think that's why a lot of us were skeptical about what we were seeing in those polls. We were seeing it as a really tight race because the numbers just didn't add up, and it sounds like that's playing itself out.
Now, what would be next for Colin Allred here if he does not win this race? Because he had a congressional seat that he was serving in. There are other people running for that
right,
now.
And we were talking earlier about the gerrymandering. His seat is, I think, is a plus 12 or plus 13 Democratic. It is a safe seat. He could have stayed there forever, right? And so I think that's what a lot of folks were worried about for him, that as they saw him as an up-and-coming star in kind of Texas Democratic politics, he's done right now, right? And so and the question of where you go next is tough, right? They're just, it's tough. He's just done it as a statewide race. It hasn't been successful. So I think it's going to be really hard to see where he can go next politically.
Again, we will check in when other outlets in the AP call this race as well. To our crew over there, do we have Aaron ready to go? All right, awesome. Aaron, if you can hear me, we are excited to have you here on the live stream. I know there's a lot up on the ballot in Beaumont right now. What kinds of issues are people getting to vote on, and what kind of early results are you seeing as we're starting to see these numbers come in?
Yeah, Jordan, the early vote total for Jefferson County, the largest county here in this area, took a while to come in. Usually that first batch is dumped about, 7:10, 7:15. It came well after 8 o'clock tonight. But it was just a few months ago that the entire state of Texas was watching what was going on here in Jefferson County, here in Orange County, and Jasper County. That, of course, was the Texas House District 21 runoff between embattled Texas House Speaker Dade Phelan and his Republican challenger, David Covey. But tonight, I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about some of the themes that we'll see here tonight. We have two congressional districts here. Both are expected to go Republican. The Republican candidates are by far in the lead. That would be Randy Weber and also Congressman Brian Babin. I also wanted to talk a little bit about some presidential race trends in 2020 and touch on a couple of local positions, and you'll understand why. The Jefferson County Tax Assessor Collector, also Jefferson County Sheriff. Now, this area used to go blue long before they went by red and blue. It was always traditionally a strong Democratic area throughout the 70s, the 80s, and that started to change really in 1994. I wanted to show some quick results from 2020 just to kind of show what is representative here in Beaumont, Port Arthur, Orange, known as the Golden Triangle across Texas. There's really one potentially toss-up county, and that's where we are right now, Jefferson County. Beaumont is the county seat. Port Arthur also part of Jefferson County. Look right here. Donald Trump won Jefferson County by just, 0.2% 4 years ago. The initial numbers show that he is up by more than what we had 4 years ago, by at least 3 or 4 percentage points in the early vote. But all these other neighboring counties all around here, Orange, Newton, Jasper, Hardin, Liberty, Chambers, not only red counties, they are deep red counties. Now, things started to change back in 1994 here. Your panel will certainly recognize this man, the late Congressman Jack Brooks. He represented Southeast Texas from 1953 until 1995. He was ousted in the Republican Revolution of 1994 with Bob Dole and Newt Gingrich leading that cause. But and you may remember him from history, the last surviving member when LBJ was sworn in as president. But the reason I bring him up, and it's kind of representative of the shift we've seen here in the Golden Triangle over the years, his daughter is running as a Republican. She is Kate Carroll. She currently is in the lead by about 5 or 6 percentage points for Jefferson County Tax Assessor Collector over Sean Webb Locke, her Democratic challenger. So longtime congressman in office here for 42 years. His daughter not running as a Democrat, but running as a Republican. But we do have one Democrat, Jefferson County Sheriff Zena Stevens. She made history in 2016 when she was elected the first black female sheriff of Texas. She is being challenged by Republican Stephen Broussard. She is leading in the early vote by a fairly decent margin. So we'll closely watch this race where one Democrat in Jefferson County is expected to be reelected. So that's pretty much what's going on here in Beaumont. A little history lesson of the political trends. Jordan, we'll throw it back to you in San Antonio.
Aaron, thank you so much. Definitely very educational. It's interesting to see kind of over time how these trends have changed. I'm sure that's something that you get to look at
Sure.
all day, every day.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's so interesting to me. I want to take us back over to our storyteller board here. You and I had been talking about Tarrant County. So I've got it pulled up over here. They've got about 60% or 68% reporting now.
Yeah.
What is standing out to you about this now?
Like we were mentioning, those of us who thought there's going to be any chance for Colin Allred, obviously the big urban areas were going to have to really produce for him, and Tarrant was going to be the one that has not been reliable. And once again, it looks like it didn't do for Colin what he needed tonight, right? So even that little margin there is what you're going to see that kind of ends up hurting him. We're starting to look at the other county results. Obviously, Ted Cruz coming from Harris, which is a massive vote, but because it's home for him, only kind of a +10 for him there. He was really going to need Williamson was pointing him in the right direction, but Tarrant just didn't get him there. Looks like even here for us in Bexar County, a +16. Dallas 28, Travis 45. Those are the kinds of things that was going to help Colin, but he needed Tarrant not just to win it, but to get a decent chunk, and it looks like he didn't get that done tonight.
All right, so here are the statewide results that we're looking at right now across Texas. Almost 62% reporting on this U.S. Senate race, 52.3% for Ted Cruz so far, 45.8% for Colin Allred. If we can, I'd like to bring our panel back in. 52.3 to 45.8, not necessarily the razor thin that a lot of the pollsters were predicting. Walk us through your thoughts. What do you think it would take for Colin Allred to come back from this, and what do you think overall about what we're seeing?
Well, I think the race is called, so I don't think he can come back from this. And again, I think with the early vote trending more conservative, that was a huge factor. The Hispanic community in Texas is trending also more conservative as well. A lot of the CNN people and the MSNBC people, they think that because we have brown skin along the border, that we're going to be more aligned with some of the liberal issues. But the Hispanic community is huge in Texas, and they support the energy industry, they support border security, they support the police, and they're not woke. So when you appeal to Hispanics in even some of the poorest areas in the state, that starts to trend into votes that turn out as well that weren't there maybe 20 years ago.
My sense would be, looking at these numbers, is that they're so large. I wouldn't have expected that kind of 52 to 45 kind of spread. Now they may close a little bit as the night goes along, but it has been called for Cruz. So it's not going to close to the point where Allred is back in it. But my point is, the polls were showing 3 points, 2 points difference. This is a 7-point difference. Now what that tells me is that there's something fundamental going on, not just in Texas, but in the country at large. So it looks to me like Trump's lead in Georgia is a little bigger than what the polls showed. His lead in North Carolina is stronger than what the polls showed. And I don't know whether that's a Sunbelt phenomenon, maybe a Southern phenomenon, and whether it reaches the blue wall of Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. But I think this Texas race has to be looked at in a larger context, and I would say the context at the moment is Trump is running stronger than the polls showed, and that spreads down ballot to races like this one. It's too early to say all of that, but you just got to look for the kind of the tea leaves and see what they tell you. And right now, I would say this race has implications nationally.
But Democrat hasn't won a statewide race since 1994?
94.
Since 1994. And everybody is really speculating, I think building on what Beto was able to do, in 2018, which was not a presidential year. So we thought, as Democrats, maybe this is the opportunity because it's a presidential year and we do better. But when those numbers started coming in that it was a real horse race, everyone was really questioning, where are they getting this information? A lot of money was spent based on those numbers, so you have to start suspecting how some things get manipulated. But there's no way. I thought a victory for Allred would be if he came within 3 points. That would have been almost like, you're going to lose, but you go with 3 points. That's a good showing. This is not a good showing. But the other thing is, you really need to look at, in my opinion, how did women vote? Because, the whole thing, whether it's a presidential race or what's happening here in Texas, how are women voting?
And suburbs.
Yeah, exactly. And we always say white women and such. And then the other thing, too, is look, we started the program with what? Discussing the ads, the transgender, the horde, being invaded and taken over at the border, and we
again,
kept.
That resonates in the large Hispanic swaths.
Oh no, that's what I'm saying. And we said, well, how do we get away from that? You're not going to get away from that when you sensationalize it. It's winning for you, and I keep thinking how destructive it is when we keep having. It's a negative campaign, Vice President Harris tried to go positive and, we're going to unite and all that good stuff. I'm not sure it really inspired people anymore, Henry. I'm starting to worry that a positive message and being constructive just doesn't get the attention and instill in people something that makes them want to support you. I think if you say, I am going to protect your daughters from those boys in the bathroom, that resonates. I'm going to protect you from those criminals coming across the border. That sounds good. All of that. Or else the other thing too is we're going to do something about oil and gas so that you don't have to pay a lot at the pump. You never really want to understand how gas prices are actually set. But all of that works. But it's such a negative world that we live in today.
Well, you know, the thing about our state, we're the greatest state in the nation, and usually you only throw out a major incumbent if you want change. And there are not a lot of people in Texas, the majority doesn't want change. I mean, we have the greatest economy. We have now we have more Fortune 500s here than any other state in the nation. People are moving here, sometimes by 1,000 a day from states like California, because we have a great quality of life. And we also don't have the racial divisiveness that a lot of other areas have. So you have to have real unhappiness before somebody's going to stand up and go, man, I want change. And so obviously they didn't want change.
Well, I want change. And so when I'm with my Republican opponent, I say, you want a better education for 90-something% of the kids in this state? You don't want to be ranked 48th in education finance? You want to do something about what's happening with oil and gas and the transition to renewables, because we know our air and everything. You want to have more people have health insurance rather than leading the nation in uninsureds. And I'm putting them in real negative. These are issues that we should be working on, because I love Texas. I'm a Texan, but we're not, you know, a perfect state, and we have the riches and the resources to make it better for everyone. But that's not the way you get these votes. I'm just telling you. And you want change.
We're a happy state, and generally more than almost any other state, because again, from these other states like Illinois, California, New York, they all move here because they want to be here and live in this great state.
I think Charlie did touch on something that's really important from these numbers for Cruz and Allred, and that is, what is the women's vote doing tonight? The great hope for some kind of Democratic sweep tonight was that women were going to respond to the reproductive rights issues and to Trump's ungentlemanly style and his crude language in talking about women going to do something for them whether they like it or not would resonate, and that would fuel some kind of flipping to blue. But it hasn't happened in this race, and this is a race where it could have been seen. And from what we're seeing about some of the other states, there's no evidence of that on a large scale. We'll see what happens before the night is over in the three northern states, but it doesn't seem to be making any kind of dramatic change in Georgia or North Carolina, and even Virginia is in some jeopardy at the moment.
Yeah, I was just going to add one final piece. So I think it's going to be important to kind of see what happens with the female vote tonight in Texas. But I think I differ a little bit on the numbers. You know, I said this a little bit earlier. If we think back to Beto's loss against Governor Abbott, which was 11 points, that's when we look at the data, that's kind of the norm, kind of a plus 11 for us at Texas. And so I think in a strange way, these polls kind of created an unrealistic expectation. I've been telling folks, if Colin were to come in single digits, that actually is a victory. And so if it turns out to be this kind of margin of 6 or 7 points, when we look at the data, the number of Republicans versus Democrats who actually are voting in Texas right now, that's moving in the right direction for the Democratic Party. Not enough in Tarrant County, like we said tonight in Fort Worth, but still, we shouldn't be seeing this as, oh my God, something horrible happened. He was supposed to kind of get it done. We know that those polls were definitely unrealistic. And if he goes down, it looks which he's at right now, that 6 or 7 margin, that actually is a movement in the right direction for the Democratic Party.
And
well, but there's another issue there, and that is Beto tried one strategy, which was a overtly progressive strategy.
And this was a moderate kind of. Yeah.
This is a different kind of a moderate strategy. In fact, he stayed away from some controversial questions that Democrats would have liked him to speak to. He was softer about it. So those are two approaches.
Right. Two very different approaches.
To move forward, and neither one of them seems to have generated quite enough.
Right.
And I do want to point out, too, the Associated Press, it does not look like has called this race yet. Fox News did call it for Ted Cruz. We're still waiting. Right now, AP has Cruz up plus 8%. We do have Michael Atkinson standing by in Dallas. He's with the Colin Allred campaign. Obviously, Michael, these are not the numbers that the Allred campaign wanted to see. What are you hearing in that room tonight? What is the mood like?
Jordan, there's sort of a subdued optimism here in the room. These folks are obviously still hopeful that things could turn out in their favor, but they knew it was going to be something of a long shot to flip what has been a Republican seat for years and years and years. What's been interesting to watch as you look at the vote results is that really the Cruz and Allred race has almost mirrored, according to the Secretary of State's websites, the results of the Trump-Harris results. They've almost been bar for bar matching one another, and you've seen that in this room tonight, that they've really been echoing all of the Harris campaign rallying cries. You watched, as we see Harris winning certain states on the feed behind us, that there's a huge roar in the room, as well as something that's been an Allred campaign priority, which is when we saw the results of a constitutional amendment for access to abortion in New York that went in favor of that amendment. You heard a huge roar from this crowd, and that really kind of shows exactly what the values of these folks are, something that Colin Allred has really prioritized in his campaign. So, as I said, subdued optimism. You have folks here still holding out hope that results are going to turn in their favor, but it hasn't exactly gone their way so far, Jordan.
Michael, thank you. I want to check back in on a couple of our Texas House races now. Greg Casar has been declared the winner in his district. Tony Gonzalez's campaign has just declared victory as well. I just got that email a few minutes ago. I'm going to take you back over here to our touchscreen board so we can look through some of these House races and how they're going right now. Obviously, all of the vote not in yet. You can see here in District 35, Greg Casar declared the winner. This district stretches all up I-35, San Antonio to Austin. We've seen a lot of growth in this area. We talked with our panel a little bit earlier about candidates being able to run pretty much anywhere in Texas, and Stephen Wright was an example of that. He was actually a sheriff's deputy in Riverside, California, and came to Texas because he didn't like the California policies. So he is now a Texan. He was running for House. Greg Casar was declared the winner there. We're going to check back in on these races here in a second. My producers are saying that Bexar County incumbent Sheriff Javier Salazar is speaking, so we're going to check in on what he's saying, and then we're going to come back and look at some more of these House races.
Y esto, si puedo declarar victoria, es algo bonito para nosotros.
Hace rato te preguntaba yo, ya llevas 2 términos. Un tercero, ¿qué es lo que quieres terminar? ¿Qué es lo que todavía crees que puedes hacer en otros 4 años?
Bueno, el público han respondido bien a lo que hemos estado haciendo hasta este punto, entonces vamos a seguir haciendo lo mismo, peleando contra la violencia doméstica, seguir reclutando y contratando oficiales como lo estamos haciendo. Vamos a seguir haciendo lo mismo.
All right, we're going to check back in on that in just a second. Now, if you are familiar with Bexar County, this is not something that will be abnormal to you. Sheriff Salazar does all of his press conferences in English and in Spanish. Here in San Antonio, we have stations that speak both languages, and he speaks both languages, so he goes back and forth. So we will check back in and bring that to you here soon. I want to check back in over here as well. Like we said, Tony Gonzalez declared victory here, 61.5%. We're still at about 55% reporting here against Santos Limon. I'm going to take you through a couple more of these as well. Let's check in here. This is Congressman Cuellar's district. Commander Jay Furman in the lead right now, 51.3% over current Congressman Cuellar. Still only less than 40% reporting here, I do want to point out. But right now, this is swinging toward Commander Furman. Our Yami Virgen is out there. We'll check back in with her a little bit too. And this is a district that we have been watching too. Monica de la Cruz and Michelle Vallejo. They competed against each other in the last race as well. It was a very interesting matchup. And Professor Sepulveda, feel free to weigh in on this. Right now, a pretty comfortable lead for Monica de la Cruz. Still only about 13% reporting, but this is a big difference right here.
Yeah, and once again, 13%, so really low in the count.
Very early.
Yeah, and once again, as we mentioned earlier at the top of the show, only 3 House races that were even kind of potentially competitive, and this is one of them. And I'm thinking back to what Henry C. Sneddles just mentioned to us about the 2 kind of Colin Allred, the Allred and Beto's kind of approach. In a strange way, you had Michelle, who was being accused of doing both within the same campaign.
Right. Being
a progressive, but then really get called out by her supporters for putting out an ad that was talking about the chaos at the border that seemed to be a little bit of that moderate move to the center kind of strategy. So my gut tells me this is way too early, but we'll have to kind of see, because this one is actually one of the three that should be competitive in Texas tonight.
Right. We'll definitely keep watching that. Now this one over here, 41% reporting. This is Vicente Gonzalez versus Mayra Flores here. Still early. This is looking very close as well. This map tipping more toward Gonzalez at the moment, who was in District 15 for quite a bit of time as well. So I'm just going to go through and check on a little bit more of these for us. Michael Cloud with a healthy lead here. He is the incumbent in this race. If we zoom in, no surprise here, unopposed. Joaquin Castro will be the representative, no surprise. This is something I would love to talk to our panel about too. Lloyd Doggett has been declared the victor in this race up near Austin. And something interesting about Congressman Doggett, he was the first Democratic congressman to call on President Biden to withdraw from the race. There were some questions about whether that would have an impact here tonight. Was there a doubt in your mind, Professor Sepulveda, that Lloyd Doggett, that would lower it for him at all?
That's an easy one. No.
I heard it from our panel across the way too immediately.
Yeah, district obviously carved for him, so yeah, no problem at all, right?
And this is the third matchup between these two right here. Former Congressman, I would love to hear your opinion as well on this call to action for the sitting president to not run again. Is that something that you thought that you would ever see? How did you react when you saw that announcement?
It took a lot of courage for Lloyd to do that, and it made him stand out on a national level. But Lloyd is extremely effective with his constituents. He is always out in his communities. He listens to his constituents. He's very accessible. I remember many years ago when I would sit in rooms and they would be talking about redistricting, and the discussion would be, don't try to write Lloyd a bad district. It doesn't matter what you write him, he's going to win. Because he does that. He has that kind of political retail strength that is just almost unmatched.
Well, I remember one redistricting session where the Republican legislature drew I guess it was the 35th, from Austin all the way down.
Yes.
Remember, all the way down to the border. And so we referred to it as the Fajita district because it looked like a fajita strip. And you know what Lloyd went? He went over there and worked it.
Yep.
No one outworks Lloyd Doggett.
I remember
and
that.
he whipped everybody. You cannot defeat Lloyd Doggett. He's really quite an incredible public servant. And what he did with President Biden, he pointed out something that was very obvious. What the public doesn't know is behind the scenes there were many, many members of Congress and former members of Congress that were reaching out to the White House in very diplomatic terms and saying that it was time, definitely. And then, of course, the president stepped down basically from the nomination process. So it was pretty painful for a lot of people, but as it turned out, it was the right thing to do, and Biden did what it was, again, the prudent and something that cost him basically the last, what would have been his last campaign. But we did well, and it does say a lot about what Vice President Harris was able to do stepping in so late. It's incredible that the organization came together as it did.
There's no doubt, but that President Biden would have gone down hard if he was the Democratic nominee at this point. And Lloyd Doggett has always been independent and courageous, brave, willing to say what no one else does, and because he does the constituency work and because he's usually right in that independence, he does very well in elections. And I would say secretly, in their heart of hearts, people admire him for what he did and acknowledge that it was the right thing.
And obviously, you mentioned that Vice President Harris stepped into this race a little bit late. What impact does that have on a campaign level? How overtime do you have to go when you step in at such a late hour?
Well, even if you run for a local office, you have to be all in. And I always tell candidates, sometimes I know they talk to my colleagues here as well, they come up, people think about running, how hard is it? How hard do you have to work? You have to be all in. But I have been associated directly with a couple of presidential campaigns, and they are, as these guys have, they are phenomenal. They are, you have an army of people that are scheduling you every day. They're giving you advice every hour. You only stop when your body gives out and to sleep. And then you get up the next day, and sometimes they make fun of a candidate because they get off a plane and they say, "What city am I in?" It is nothing against them. It is hard to remember. I have been with candidates before where they go, "What city?" Good candidates, "What city am I in?" So it is more grueling than anything that you can imagine.
Well, and beyond that, there takes a certain length of time for the public to get to know you. And that's what the primary process is about. Candidates usually announce of like in the fall of the previous year, and then they start working to get to Iowa in the first of the caucuses, and then New Hampshire. And over time, in multiple debates and multiple, the New Hampshire primary is retail politics. It's in people's living rooms, and they get to know you. So because President Biden was holding the position, she didn't actually get to become the candidate until July. So July, August, September, October is all she had for a process that usually takes 2 years for you to get known. And I think it matters because in this election, I can't tell you how many people use the analogy of saying, and this is a little crude for people to say, but they would say, "I'd rather go with the devil I know than the devil I don't know." Imagine that. I'd rather go with the devil I know, which in this case was Trump and all his shenanigans, with rather than the person I don't know, because I just don't know him. I'm not comfortable with him. Don't know enough. And fundamentally, she never had the time to get known at that level, in my opinion.
But then when people did start to know her, Henry, they saw shenanigans with her too. Different shenanigans.
Nothing. Here we have a partisan divide. Nothing compared to.
So the other piece I would bring. So if you look at the actual time, right? So former President Trump has been running for 2 years.
No, 40.
Yeah. So he never stopped, right? But he officially kind of 2 years.
Yeah.
Vice President 107 days, right?
Yeah.
Wow.
Now, but the other thing I think was a plus for the Vice President, and I think what could be the difference tonight, we'll have to go to see where things are with the presidential race, but she inherited from President Biden a campaign infrastructure, right? And so this is a lot of folks who have been part of the Obama campaign, who kind of knew how to do this. It takes it takes money. And so she got handed something that was ready to go, that then they still, 107 days is short, but it wasn't like she was 100% starting from scratch. And, this past weekend, I was hearing from the campaign, 90,000 volunteers on 3 million door knocks over in the battleground states over the weekend. Today I heard from the campaign that there were 100,000, more than 100,000 door knocks a day just in Pennsylvania alone. So, and the Trump campaign took a very different approach and decided to outsource their ground game to Elon Musk, to Charlie Kirk, Ralph Reed, who's probably the one who really knows what he's doing. These other guys are new to it, but kind of billionaire, super PAC kind of stuff. And so that's a very different. So you're going to see out tonight a very different approach to what it means to actually kind of get it done at the presidential level. Right. And that's going to be an interesting.
Not many people know this because I did it on my own and I did it on the quiet. And some of it was not even with the campaign, but I was in Phoenix in Arizona for Kamala. I was in Tucson another weekend. I went to Pennsylvania and they sent me, this time the campaign, to Allentown, Reading, Bethlehem, Lancaster, and Lebanon. And then this last weekend I was in Raleigh and Durham in North Carolina. I came away optimistic because I saw the ground game and I thought, God, these are just people working incredibly well. The system is working. Now, it appears from where we are right at this moment, and we haven't talked about the national in a little while, that she has to win those 3 blue wall states. That's what it's going to boil down to. If she does, it is a result of exactly what we're talking about, inheriting that campaign organization and having made it work. It will be a very tough thing to win those 3 tonight or in the next couple of days.
Absolutely.
But that's what this is getting down to.
And even I'll just mention, the final part is a Texas piece. Texas is a non-battleground state, but even here locally, we had folks like Judy Hall, who's been a long-time activist, Jennifer Longoria, Lauren, a lot of these folks have been out. In the last 4 days with San Antonio and Texas statewide, they've made nearly, by the time they finish today, probably in excess of 800 to 900,000 calls of Texans calling it a battleground state. So you're seeing even the notion of not just the 7 states and people going there physically, California, Texas, other places that aren't in play, also being a part of that infrastructure as well.
Do you think that that will continue moving forward in campaigns?
You know, I believe it's a smart, that's how we won with President Obama, with Senator Obama, and I think it's before it was so hard to do, but with technology and with the amount of resources that people are contributing now, you can do it, and now people usually, other than the Trump campaign this time, usually kind of have to do that, right? So.
Well, we have a lot to get to. We are going to go to Yami Virgen, who is standing by with the Henry Cuellar campaign. Then let's look national again. We're going to show you that AP election map. And then I'm also told that Ted Cruz is going to be taking the podium soon. A lot coming up. Let's go to Yami Virgen now. Yami, we've been looking at some of the early results coming in. How is the Cuellar campaign feeling?
Well, he's standing right next to me, and I have to say this. He said we have the dream team in the House with Henry Cisneros, Henry Bonilla, and Charlie Gonzalez, and Professor Sepulveda. The congressman wanted to say hello.
I certainly want to say hello to all 3 of y'all. Charlie, of course, Henry Cisneros, Henry Bonilla, and of course the professor also. Thank you for what y'all do. So good. I hope to see y'all soon.
All right, Congressman, we're down to your mero mole. This is your area. Zapata and Webb County are still out. What are you hoping for?
Well, I think once Webb and Zapata come in, that's going to get us at a pretty good lead. And then we'll wait for election day. But those are the 2 big ones. I did win Bexar County by a little bit over 56% in the early vote. So Bexar County, thank you so much. And then, of course, the other big one is going to be Webb County. So we're waiting for that. So it's looking very good right now.
Tell me what your biggest concern is tonight. Of course, your own race, but then if we send you back to Washington, what are you looking at? Are you going to be able to carry out the wishes of the people of Texas if the House is flipped?
Well, first of all, right now it's a Republican majority, and I'm still doing very well working with the Republicans. If it becomes Democratic, then it'll be a little better, of course. So either way, I work with both Democrats and Republicans. And I prefer to have Democrats, but the reality is I can work with anybody that's in the majority.
What were you expecting? Were you expecting this to be a landslide tonight, or did you know it was going to be close?
Well, I'll be very straightforward. Anytime President Trump is on the ballot, it does have an impact. I noticed in counties that have been blue, he won early vote in Duval. He won early vote in Starr County. So he's winning in counties that have been blue. In fact, Senator Cruz won in some of those counties also. But I, in turn, was the biggest vote getter of anybody in those counties. So the people split their votes. But it's interesting, President Trump did do very well in some of the southern counties, Hispanic counties.
What's the most important issue facing the people of the 28th district? Because it runs from Laredo all the way to San Antonio, and it's very different. We go from here, it's a lot of, import-export. You're right at the border to San Antonio, the 7th largest city in the United States.
Yeah. Well, I certainly, there's different issues. We have border security. We got transportation issues. There's so much trade that's going to be coming out of Laredo that's going to have an impact. And San Antonio, right now we're handling 17,000 trailers a day. We just expanded, we're about to expand the bridge, the World Trade Bridge, from 8 lanes to 18 lanes. Then the Columbia lane from 8 to 16 lanes. And then we're about to add the second rail bridge here. So Laredo handles about 40% of all the trade between the U.S. and Mexico. A lot of that business goes up to San Antonio and beyond that. So I think we're going to see a lot of trade coming in. So that's why I always say it's, border security is important to me, but making sure that we continuously work on trade because that's what creates most of the jobs in my district.
What are you thinking about the tariffs that former President Trump has been saying he will put back on Mexico. How will that affect us?
Well, last time when we were negotiating the USMCA, right in the middle, he started talking about adding tariffs. So, that does motivate Mexico. I think the reason he said that was that he wants Mexico to do more to stop the migrants from coming in. Now, keep in mind, just recently, the current administration did that, and the numbers went down. They should have been doing that a long time ago. So I think by that thread, I don't think he'll do it because Mexico's our number one trading partner. It would impact them, and it definitely would impact the consumers on the U.S. side. But I think that's going to get Mexico to do better in stopping not only the illegal migration, but especially fentanyl, the drugs that are coming into the United States.
All right. Thank you, Congressman. And we're going to be talking to you again in a little bit as we wait for Zapata and Webb County to come in so we can start seeing the numbers from your hometown. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And we're going back to you, Jordan, in San Antonio.
Yami, do you have time for a quick question, if you're able?
Yes, sure.
So
Sure.
I would
for
love to
me or
talk
for
to
the
you.
congressman?
For you, ma'am. For you.
Okay.
So,
for
Yami,
me.
For,
for
viewers who
Thank
don't know,
you.
Yami
Thank
spends
you.
more time at the border for our station than probably any other reporter. She sees it firsthand. She does ride-alongs with sheriffs and Border Patrol, DPS. The border has been such a huge topic during this election, Yami, and I would love if you could walk people through what those border towns are seeing. I feel like there is such a narrative about what's going on at our border. What is one takeaway that you want people to know about what things are really like?
Well, I have to say thank you for all of that, Jordan, but you're right there. You have come in and you have really adopted what it means to be a Texan. You and I weren't born here, but this is our home. When we go to the border, we see many different things. For the people that live on the border, it's the perception that is out there that's painted sometimes by national media of what the border is. The numbers right now are at about 250, 300 average a day in the Del Rio sector. The numbers have gone down. For many of the people that live there, they are tired of seeing people going through their property. For the ones that live right along the border. For other people, it's just there has to be a solution. At some point, people and the elected officials have to start working together. For the sheriffs that are along the border, they deal with this day in and day out. We were recently out in Sanderson County with Sheriff Thaddeus Cleveland and my photojournalist that works with me all the time, Paul Sanchez. We were out there in the middle of the night, and just to see people coming across, this is not an easy thing. The train was speeding past us. They must have been going more than 120 miles per hour, and they had all of the migrants sitting there waiting. For the law enforcement agents that have to do this day in and day out, you're not only seeing men, you're seeing women, you're seeing small children. Many people are injured, and it's the human side of them that it's so difficult to see. And we have to figure something out. You're not going to figure it out just the Republicans alone. It has to be the Republicans and the Democrats coming up with a solution that works for everyone. But it is heartbreaking. It truly is sometimes because people love their hometowns. For many people across the United States, the border is a thing that they will never see. For the people of Texas, for most of us, we have gone to the border at one point or another. I remember, and you can ask the Henry and Charlie and the professor, many of us were used to coming to Laredo, going across to the Pink Cadillac, having drinks, going shopping, and it's something that we can no longer do because of those cartels that moved in. Many of the migrants that are coming through, they have to pay to be able to get across. If they don't pay, they're kidnapped. Many times women are raped, they're killed. Children are taken from their families. And many people say that's the risk that they take trying to get here. But how bad does it have to be wherever they're coming from to put your family through that pain of taking that trek? We have been to Darien and Panama at the jungle. I can tell you there is no way I would ever make it through there. It is just incredible to me what is going on, and a lot of it is happening here. And many people say this is not an immigration crisis. This is a humanitarian crisis that is happening, especially here in Texas. This is our backyard. We are watching this. We go out and report, and we try to get all sides of the issues so people can truly see what is going on down here in Ground Zero.
Yami, thank you so much. We are going to continue watching that race between Congressman Cuellar and Commander Jay Furman as the night goes on. Thank you so much for your work on this. I know you have a show to get to here in a second, so thank you for joining us. I want to take you now to the New York Times Electoral College map. We've been looking around, finding which ones we liked the best. We liked this one, so we wanted to show it to you. So something unique about this map is they're showing the percent reporting in the states that haven't been called yet, which is interesting. Some of the states that appear to be leaning on other maps, they're showing kind of a clear picture of what they look like now. Obviously, Texas has been called for former President Donald Trump, and we're seeing some other states here as well. Professor Sepulveda, are you seeing anything here that surprises you, and what are you watching most closely now that all of the swing states are in the phase where they are counting?
Yeah, no, I don't see anything that's really surprising to me. What's also great about the New York Times, Nate Cohn, who kind of helps lead them on the data side. So we were talking about even Virginia, is that question of what pieces are in yet. But you can see here they have something that became famous a few cycles ago. That's their swing-o-meter, right? And so even though here you still see Trump a little bit ahead in Virginia, they still list Virginia as likely Democratic, right? Now what's interesting though is when we go to the blue wall states, no surprise, all, even at different levels of percentages, all still seen as toss-ups. Right, so nothing there. North Carolina, likely Republican. Georgia, likely Republican. Obviously not a good thing for the vice president, but that kind of shows us where we are right now.
Absolutely. So I'm going to let you hang on this just for a second so everybody can see it. We were receiving word that Senator Ted Cruz might take the podium here soon. We are still working to get that shot for you. As soon as we have that, we will bring it to you. Again, we know that Fox News had called that race for former Senator Ted Cruz. I'm going to check in on AP as well. So for right now, here we are looking at the New York Times map. Right now, the Electoral College has 109 for Vice President Kamala Harris, 198 for former President Donald Trump. Again, a lot of the swing states that we're watching this evening, those votes are being counted right now. So hopefully in the next little bit, we'll see those. I'm seeing NBC News over my shoulder here. NBC News is now projecting that Ted Cruz will retain his Texas Senate seat. So Fox News called it a little bit ago. We're now seeing NBC News reporting on this as well. So Senator Ted Cruz believed to win that race here in Texas. We've been talking about that race all night long, a lot of eyes on it. I'm sure you saw several campaign ads for that race. It was the most expensive Senate race so far this year. So again, I want to remind you, we have our ticker going at the bottom of the screen now. So if you are wanting to check in on some of your local races all across Texas, we've got those scrolling. If you don't see it immediately, keep watching. We have all of Texas on this ticker right now, so just make sure that you stay tuned for that. And again, a lot of these counties are still reporting. So obviously, we want answers now. We live in a very immediate world. Everybody wants to know right now who the next president is going to be. How long, genuinely, do you think that it will take for us to have that answer?
Yeah, I think if what I'm looking at here right now, if with Pennsylvania about 51% of the vote in, Wisconsin 44%, probably a little bit faster than we thought was going to come in tonight, but still knowing that you've got big places, Philly, Pittsburgh, and Pennsylvania, for example, in the suburbs, still probably going to take till tomorrow. So if everything plays out the way like it says it here, we're still not going to know tonight, right? It's still going to play out at least until tomorrow and may take a little bit of time. If those blue wall states do not get determined in the next day or two, and Arizona and Nevada are still in play, that's going to, we mentioned earlier, Nevada, I mean, you can have until November the 9th to get your mail-in ballots, and so that could take even a little bit more time as well. What I am seeing here, which is interesting, we saw that, you know, even though no one was counting on it to change, Iowa, for example, you know, we saw that incredible poll that came out over the weekend, and here you're seeing with almost 40% of the vote, but Trump barely ahead by about 4 or 5 in Iowa. We saw this crazy 5% poll in Kansas. People, does that make any sense? Mm-hmm. Kind of a 6-point lead for Trump. So we were wondering there if once again, and it's probably going to be explained by the female vote, that these places that are even redder are less red tonight. And does that say anything? Particularly Iowa's, it's kind of so much of it plays out in kind of a comparable to some of the counties in Wisconsin as well. So that's something we'll want to be looking for tonight as well too.
And a little bit of historical context for you here. In 2020, Joe Biden was announced as the new president at 11:26 a.m. on November 7th.
Saturday. Yeah.
4 days after Election Day. Former President Trump, as we know, attempted to overturn those results. For 2016, Trump was declared president at 2:29 a.m. on November 9th, defeating Hillary Clinton. Election day was the 8th of that year, so that came a little bit quicker. And then in 2012, the AP announced Barack Obama's re-election at 11:38 p.m. on the same night that polls closed, which that year was November 6th. So
this is another interesting point.
taken longer.
Yeah, and I don't think it's going to take this long, but you'd have to play out possibilities. Last time around, when President Biden was named the winner on that Saturday, what happens is that you then go into transition. Now, what happens is there was a simple little rule that said the government had to actually say that the race was done. And at that point, President Trump was saying, no, it's not, we won. There was a political appointee, it was called ascertainment was the fancy word, but she delayed kind of saying that the results were actually valid, so the transition couldn't start. You have a short period of time, 75 days from the election to inauguration, to kind of get the next government set up. They changed the rules. It's not going to take this long, hopefully this time, but the new rules say that if there is no winner declared within 5 days, both sides get to start transitions as they're about to take government. And so that could lead to some real chaos.
that would be an interesting scenario for sure.
So we're hoping it's not Sunday that we get the results. So.
Right. We have Senator Ted Cruz at the podium now. We are going to dip into that and hear what he is saying, and then we're going to have our panel comment on his remarks when we return.
But he learned what we've always known, that Texas isn't for sale. And Texans can't be bought. Amen. Over the last 2 years, I've traveled every corner of this state, from the Panhandle to the Valley, from deep East Texas to far in West Texas. We have traveled 9,094 miles, 53 rallies all over the state of Texas. I've worn out my boots, at times my voice, and certainly the patience of my incredible political team, who did an amazing job on this campaign, and I think is the very best team in all of politics. And what I found traveling the state of Texas was worth every single mile. Because everywhere I went, I found something that gives me profound hope. Common sense isn't dead. It is alive and well in Texas. Everywhere I went, I met Texans who share a simple dream: to keep their families safe, to keep their freedom secure, and to keep their Texas values strong. Tonight, we are witnessing incredible results, especially with Hispanics across the state of Texas. And we are seeing tonight generational change in South Texas. The results tonight, this decisive victory, should shake the Democrat establishment to its core. I've spent months in the Rio Grande Valley, sitting in family kitchens, visiting small businesses, praying in local churches. And let me tell you what I learned. Our Hispanic communities aren't just leaving the Democrat Party. They're coming home to conservative values they never left. They understand something the liberal elites never will. There's nothing progressive about open borders. There is nothing compassionate about chaos. And there is nothing Latino about letting criminals roam free. And just for good measure, we're not tacos. We're small business owners who know that lower taxes means more jobs. We're parents who know that secure borders means safe neighborhoods. And we're families who know that Texas energy independence means prosperity for everyone. And I found this same awakening to common sense everywhere I traveled. I saw it in the eyes of Texas mothers, tired of being lectured to about their values, their faith, and their children's education. I heard it from energy workers in the Permian Basin and the Eagle Ford Shale, men and women who know that American energy independence isn't just about dollars and cents. It's about national security and freedom. It's about families being able to fill their gas tanks without emptying their bank accounts. Look, common sense isn't complicated. It tells us that borders have to mean something. It tells us that laws must be enforced, that children deserve innocence, and that prosperity comes from work, not a handout. And here's what common sense tells us above all, that the people who built Texas, whether their families came 5 generations ago or 5 months ago, understand Texas better than any social engineer in Washington ever will. When I return to the Senate, I carry with me not just a victory, but a mandate. A mandate from the people of Texas. And let me be crystal clear about what that mandate means. First, we must secure the border. Not with empty promises, but with concrete and steel and law and order, and with the unshakable resolve from knowing we are protecting those we love. The cartels who poison our communities, the traffickers who prey on the innocent, their days are numbered. Second, we must unleash Texas energy. The answer to America's energy needs isn't Venezuelans, oil fields, or the Ayatollah in Iran. But rather it is right here in Texas, in the Permian Basin, and throughout the state of Texas. We will drill. We will frack. We will produce, and we will lead the entire world. And we will never again let foreign dictators hold American energy independence hostage. Third, we must defend our God-given rights. Not some of them, not most of them, but all of them. The right to speak truth in an age of enforced lies. The right to worship the Lord God Almighty with all of our heart, mind, and soul without government getting in the way. And the right to protect our families without asking bureaucrats for permission. But above all, this mandate means fighting for what we believe in. Fighting every day, in every way that matters, fighting for Texas jobs, for Texas values, for Texas families, fighting for the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. And fighting without retreat and without apology. Because this isn't just about politics. It's about preserving a way of life that has made Texas the last best hope for freedom for mankind. I know this in my bones. You see, this isn't just political for me. It's personal. Like all of you, my family journey makes me who I am. Many of y'all know my father, Pastor Rafael Cruz. My dad arrived here from Cuba with nothing but $100 sewn into his underwear. He washed dishes for 50 cents an hour. He learned English watching John Wayne movies. And he worked his way through the university, graduating class of '61. That journey from a Cuban prison to Texas freedom, from a dishwasher to a small business owner here in Houston to today a pastor spreading the gospel across the state. That's not just my story. That's Texas's story. Likewise, my mom. Who's Irish and Italian, born to a working class family in Delaware, who became the first person in her family ever to go to college. She graduated from Rice in 1956 with a degree in math, and she became a pioneering computer programmer at the dawn of the computer age. My dad is 85. My mom turns 90 this month. Both are here tonight, and I love you both very much. You are my heroes. And here is what Texas promises. Not equality of outcomes, but equality of opportunity. Amen. Not guaranteed success, but a guaranteed chance. Not life without struggle, but a life where struggle has meaning, where merit matters. And where dreams that are backed by sweat and steel determination can still come true. That is the promise of Texas. That is the American dream. That's what all of us fought to preserve here tonight, and that's what I give you my word I will continue to defend with every fiber of my being in the United States Senate.
Senator Ted Cruz there. He is declaring victory in the Texas Senate race over Congressman Colin Allred. Now, Professor Sepulveda, one of the things that Senator Cruz said earlier in his speech is that this is a sign of generational change. A lot of people were looking at this race as a sign of where Texas is going, how close those margins were. What do you take away from this speech and about that generational change that he's citing?
Yeah, so I think once again, numbers don't surprise me. I kind of felt like, I think a lot of us felt when you looked at the actual Texas numbers, that's where it would land for Senator Cruz tonight. Another thing he mentioned I think is interesting is going to be this question. You had a national narrative of the increasing number of Latinos moving to the Republican Party and using the Valley as an example. That's going to be interesting to see because we know that the stories seem to have been a little bit more exaggerated than the numbers turned out to be. The Latino vote has always been a competitive vote, but it'll be interesting to see whether it pops past 40%, for example, and also be able to see what happens in the exit polling for the battleground states as well. But that notion of kind of you can see from his speech the continuation of the hope of where he sees Texas is going to be going, I think there's that question of whether or not it hasn't happened yet, but as the demographic changes kind of continue to move down, that how that plays itself out. Like I said from the beginning, you know, it's that classic thing about the urban areas, 5 of the 6 largest are blue, Tarrant is purple. The rural areas, if you're a Democrat and you get 30% of the vote, you're lucky, right? It's been in the 20s. That urban-rural divide, a little bit of battle for the suburbs, still seems to be playing out even as the rural communities are shrinking in numbers, but with those huge percentages makes it so hard for Democrats to make it up statewide.
Absolutely. We've been checking in with reporters across Texas tonight. I now want to bring in Karina Hollingsworth, who is in Abilene for us. She is watching specifically House District 71. A lot has been going on. We want to check in with Karina now. What are you seeing so far now that results are rolling in, and what are some of the other things on the ballot that y'all are watching? Karina, can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Hey, Jordan. So, incumbent Stan Lambert has had a pretty eventful journey. During the primary election, Governor Abbott actually came here to Abilene to endorse his opponent, Liz Case. The governor said he was concerned because Rep. Lambert voted over 450 times in Austin, siding with Democrats. But Rep. Lambert did ultimately win the Republican nominations for House District 71, which brings us here to election night, where he's now facing off with the Democrat candidate, Linda Goolsbee. Now, those poll results have not come in here yet in Taylor County, but we will continue to keep a close watch on who will win House District 71. And I'll send it back here to you in the studio.
Karina, thank you so much. Have a good rest of your night out there. We want to send it over now. Bexar County Elections Administrator Jackie Callanan is giving an update on the count and how it's going here in San Antonio and this Bexar County area. So we are going to go and check in on what she is saying so that you can hear that here in just a moment.
Down here. And that's what we're seeing right now. Teams that are at the RSS sites they're amazing. They are absolutely amazing. And you can imagine some of those judges are exhausted. It's been a long day for them. But again, please understand that we check everything. They're checking the number of signatures they have. They're checking a number against the votes that are on that tape. And they're sitting there for a minute till it's transmitted. They do not leave the property where we are until we have a successful number that comes through that we have, and that's how we keep going with the messages that we're putting out. So when I came out here, we had already spent 82 of those up, and really, really proud. So I hope you all just, like I said, please just say thank you to the officials. They did a fantastic job. And it was a difficult job. We had some real enthusiastic poll watchers. We had, some anxious voters that were concerned with people coming up to their cars as they were doing curbside voting. We have a real high rate of curbside voting. That's what we do best, taking care of our voters. Curbside is for anyone who feels that they can't wait in line or they can't walk inside. And our judges take everything out to them, and they vote in the comfort of their home. But it does obviously take longer because the transition, because checking their ID inside, taking it, going back and forth. But again, please understand how hard those judges worked. They did a great job. I really can't say that enough. How can I help you?
So, the final numbers on the turnout today?
We won't have that for a while. Like I said, we've got 82 of 302 right now. And election day that we're showing right now is 37,224. That's how many votes that we've actually had into our system. So that number obviously will increase by the voters. It will increase as the sites come in. And we'll try and keep you up to date as fast as we can.
All right, that was Jackie Callanan, the Bexar County Elections Administrator. They are doing press conferences throughout the day now on voter turnout. And you heard her stressing the importance of being kind to poll workers and election clerks. That is something that we have seen some issues with here in Bexar County specifically. I want to show you this clip from Sheriff Javier Salazar. Earlier, I believe it was about a week and a half ago now, we had an election clerk here in Bexar County who was allegedly assaulted as he was working. He asked someone to take off a hat that was supporting a certain candidate. That person did not react well and ended up getting arrested. So I want to show you what Sheriff Salazar said about that first, and then we're going to go to our panel and talk about just the tension that we have seen specifically in this presidential race.
Nothing here is worth getting hurt for, going to jail for. This election is going to happen one way or another. In any particular race, one side's going to win, one side's going to lose. That's just the nature of things. But there's no sense picking up a criminal case, picking up a criminal history, or injuring or even killing somebody in the name of politics. It just doesn't make any sense. And so we're asking everybody to please, tone down the violence. It's just not something. There's no room for violence when it comes to the political realm. We just can't tolerate it. We can't allow it to happen. Nothing here is worth getting hurt.
Again, that was Bexar County Sheriff Javier Salazar. For our panel, obviously we have seen a lot of contention surrounding specifically this presidential race. What do you make of the fact that not just here in Bexar County, but across the country, we have seen a few incidents like this where poll workers, election clerks are getting assaulted over the voting process?
Well, I think it tells us that the anger in the country at large is very deep. And that anger is of a different quality than we've seen before. I mean, it's one thing to be angry and vent and then walk away. It's another thing to feel like your whole existence depends upon that winning that fight, and therefore taking it to new levels, escalating it to violence. And that's what we're seeing, unfortunately, in our politics on both sides. But some of the escalation is a result of incitement to carry it to that level. And so it's just a tragedy for our country that we're seeing that. It's just absolutely unacceptable that poll workers would be threatened, followed to their homes, threatened in their personal lives, their families threatened. Democracy is precious. We have to keep it. And this is not a good thing.
But it generally transcends just to everyday life as well. Just common courtesy has diminished in the last several years. Rudeness in restaurants and, people water gunning people in different parts, not just in the U.S., but in different parts of the world. It's unfortunate that we've gotten that way. The country became, I don't know whether it was coincidental or not, but during the last couple of years of the Obama administration, as stuff started to really change, someone wrote one time that a happy country does not elect a Donald Trump. Is that true? I don't know, but it's a point to at least consider. Historically, an incumbent successful president, popular, will give the blessing to their anointed next candidate, and they pretty much would win. In this case, we had, after the Obama administration, you talk about a complete outsider that came in just kind of, beating the podium and with a strong message that won. So that was a transitional point in America.
Well, the truth is something has happened to this country, and I don't have the reasons behind it, but you would hope that your leaders would lead by example. And the fact is, if you're name calling, if you're not civil, and even if you resort to violence or incite violence, it gives license to people. Then why shouldn't every citizen, if your leader, your congressman, your senator, your president, can have that type of behavior and is acceptable behavior, then why shouldn't it be to every citizen?
And you see it also even with, it's unfortunate, you see it with law enforcement. You didn't used to see people, whether it's in any city, New York or here or wherever, walk up to police and with disrespect, and they do everything possible to annoy them without actually hitting them. But that kind of lack of even common respect and common courtesy, it's unfortunate that we see a lot of that now in every state.
Well, I mean, how do you explain road rage to the extent that we have it today? resorting to, carrying a gun, shooting somebody because they honked or something. I mean, there is something really pervasive in our society today. I'm trying to figure out why. I mean, the frustration. And the weirdest thing of all, the violence that we had here in San Antonio was because somebody was violating one of the simple rules when you go to vote, is you can't display anything favoring a particular candidate or any candidate. And they got so angry they punched somebody out. Now, if you talk to that person,
a 70-year-old woman.
Unacceptable, period,
Yeah,
right?
period.
But if you talk to that person, they're all for law and order. Oh yeah, this country is going to hell because people don't have respect. But they don't look in the mirror anymore.
Yeah.
It's a serious issue, but I think leaders have failed, and I mean in a bipartisan way to come out and say all this is unacceptable. But that's not where we live today.
It's a larger discussion too. It's poor parenting
Well,
across the board, and that's not a partisan issue.
You have a very good point with respect to the role of leaders. I've noticed over the years that leadership and articulation of leadership can move the needle. It actually moves people because they listen and they get the tone and they kind of get expectations and they see an example, all of those things. When the leaders are the ones leading the way in the incitement, and it's really hard to understand. And of course, whoever's elected tonight, the next few days as president, that is going to be a major responsibility. And I hope that if Donald Trump is elected, that he is up to the task, because what we have seen from him, including January 6th, is just truly damaging to the democracy.
And gentlemen, I think about this quote all the time. Pete Buttigieg tweeted this 4 years ago, and I think about it every day. He said, leadership isn't just about policy. Leadership is about what you draw out of people. So we have seen different styles of leadership over the last 8 years. Do you think that this is something that's encouraging more people to go to the polls, or do you think it's something that is inspiring more fear in going to the polls?
Yeah, I think there's two pieces there, right? So I think you've seen on former President Trump's side a populist movement, right? So it's not there's been a notion of using that to kind of be able to get folks to kind of come out. But I think what a lot of folks were worried about was when he first kind of burst out into the scene was, I know everyone was worried about, will this get normalized? And it has, right? And so the question is kind of where it's going to go from here, and depending on what happens tonight, whether the party decides to continue to say that's a successful leadership approach. What's another thing that's really interesting is you see voters on both sides who have moved beyond even looking at issues and are saying, I'm now on a team. I'm on a side, and the other side is the enemy. And you heard the vice president in the past weekend, and you heard some other candidates saying we've got to get past this idea of being able to disagree with folks. What we've been hearing tonight from our experts here, and to be able to kind of have those tough conversations, disagree, but be okay, be respectful. But that's not the reality. And so you're hearing this notion, and even the people who are most involved in both parties not only see the other side as an enemy, but it's like, I don't want my kids marrying your kids, right? It's gone to this whole other level beyond politics. And we've got to do something about it, right? So.
Right. And Congressman Bonilla, you worked in media for many years. What do you think the role of the media is here in this larger conversation about civility and leadership and what both sides are saying, and the whole conversation that's going on about that nationwide?
Well, some people watching might remember the icon of journalism, Walter Cronkite, from many years ago. He was widely viewed as the most respected, not just journalist, but one of the most respected people in America.
Trusted.
Yeah. And he never revealed his political or personal views or stirred the pot or whatever. No one knew what his political leanings were until way after he retired. Today, every cable channel is just spewing. They spew anger on the cable channels now. And that perpetuates the problem. it's really unfortunate. I know I'm an older guy, but in the generation that, you know, I have a degree in broadcast journalism, and we were taught, even I worked in New York City for a while in a different era, but even then they required that we be objective. Do not bring your personal views to the newscast each night at 11 o'clock in New York that I worked where I worked. Now it's almost like everybody is doing it, especially on the cable channels. And the general population is not even demanding better objective journalism from local media, whether it's electronic or print. Newspapers are dying. It's not, and they're not dying because of what they're doing. They're dying because no one wants to read them anymore. As I said earlier tonight, everyone just wants to be on TikTok every day and on social media, and that's where they perpetuate emotional feelings, anger, a lot of it on social media as well. So what's the old saying, that the fault, dear Brutus, lies not in our stars but in ourselves, that we are underlings or where we are today? It is our fault as a society.
And obviously in 4 years we're going to have another presidential election. We've seen the role of things like TikTok and Instagram Reels that have played here, especially with things like generative AI. Where do you see us in the next presidential election? Because we're going to be facing a lot of these same issues with how people are getting their information.
We've touched on this several times tonight in different ways, but I'm convinced that this is an existential problem for the country and for our system of democracy. We say we have to get a handle on it, but there really isn't a clear sense of where the handle is. We just know we have something we need to work on. If you look at history, there have been any number of times when there was a dominant force in the world, a nation that was an empire, or a nation that was just the one that was the leading exploration, taking on land and responsibilities. It was a global force. The United States has been that place since the end of World War II. There is no guarantee in world history that a great nation must stay great. There is a point of inflection where nations come apart. And I think some of the things we're dealing with today are of that existential character. We cannot function as a democracy. We cannot function as a unified nation. We can't make decisions. Our Congress is stalemated because of some of these things. And they are not only the incivility and the way we treat each other, but even the way the systems that we've created keep us apart. People talk about social media as an atomizing force, meaning it takes us to basically know each other. Know just ourselves, because we can watch everything we want to one-on-one, and we've lost our ability to socialize, converse, listen to other people, understand differences, ameliorate them, and because our lives are the way they are. People are in their office, if they go to the office at all, drive their car, drive into their home and put the car in the garage, go in and listen to the channel that appeals to them, reinforcing what they already believe. These are really serious questions.
Yeah. But the digital age,
they're structural and they're personal.
Yeah. You look at how we communicate, how we entertain and everything, and with the advent of the digital age, what happened is you had a lot of players without any sense of responsibility because there is no liability. If you were a traditional newspaper, traditional TV station, traditional radio station, and you printed something or you broadcast something that you knew wasn't true or incited violence, you actually could get sued. And I believe without liability, there will never be accountability. And the law shields everyone out there, because they just say, well, we didn't say it, we just put it out there. We're aggregators, collectors, and then we send it out there, we create everybody's little silos, and then you belong to a tribe, and you just get this constant feed, and we all do it. I was looking the other day as to what I subscribe to. I guess the Wall Street Journal is probably the most conservative, viewpoint that all the others, to be real honest with you, are not that balanced. And I think we have to come to grips with what do we do in the digital age. Social media could be positive. All of it could be positive. But I remember since I wasn't good at science, I took science for non-science majors. And the only thing I remember is that I think it was a Buddhist saying that said, the key that unlocks the gates to paradise unlocked the gates to hell, meaning science and technology. And that's where we are today. It could be for good, but it can also be for really bad. And it seems like we just traveled over to the bad path and just continue. We better come to grips and start figuring out how, and I know Charlie, are you talking about regulation and liability and lawsuits? In a way I am. There has to be some liability out there for what's going on. But when violence becomes entertainment, I mean, society has gone through a heck of a evolution, but in the wrong direction, and the digital age has accelerated that development.
There's less trust in some of our primary institutions, like churches, journalism, fact-based journalism. Almost every institution is lost the trust that they once
and
had.
it starts with good parenting, and nobody wants to hear that because it is our responsibility as parents to instill these responsibilities. Here in San Antonio, guy born on the west side, he's older now, he has 2 sons, one's 17, one's a couple of years older. The other day I was talking to him because they wanted a reference letter on something, and I met the young man, 17 years old. I said, I asked him about his phone. He said, sir, in our family, we're not allowed to have phones until we're 18. Who does that? This parent, again, West Side parent, is taking responsibility, and the student's doing well in school. He works, he's responsible. He said, sir, I don't need a phone. And my older brother, when we're 18, we get a nice phone. Oh my gosh. You talk about good parenting, and the father was sitting there, was proud of his son. The son was proud to be part of a family that had those principles.
No,
Gentlemen, I'm gonna circle back with you on this here in just a second. We have reporter Stephanie Esquivel standing by now. She is at where a lot of the Democrats in our local races are watching. Oh, I'm being told that they're moving. We're going to be able to continue on this. Professor Sepulveda, I've been wanting to ask you too. You work with young people all the time. What do they make of this and kind of the political climate and the rhetoric that we're seeing? And then also, like we've been talking about, how they get their information. We're not seeing students like yours sitting down and watching us on the news every night. They're getting the information from different places now.
Yeah, and I think you see a real duality, right? There's both a positive and negative. We've been talking about a lot of the negative challenges that are here, but for a lot of the young folks, they're digital natives, right? That's all they know. And so it's interesting to see on the positive side how they're looking to artificial intelligence, how they're looking to kind of help them in terms of just taking on tasks and learning getting better with those kinds of pieces. At the same time that they also understand, what's interesting you're starting to see with the next generation is a little bit of a rejection of as much of the public facing of it. Mm-hmm. So you're seeing that next generation who are still going to be all digital natives, but are not so crazy about the idea of putting everything out there of your life. And so maybe there's a little bit of a learning kind of coming back that you're seeing from the next generation that gives me a little bit of hope of what's going to be kind of going on. But I think there's both pieces of this kind of the artificial intelligence piece, the generative piece that we're kind of seeing that's a challenge.
That was, we all obviously did a ton of election stories, and the ones that I did in the last week or so were about AI and the impact that could have on elections. And one of the overwhelming lessons that I learned in working on that story is a lot of officials don't believe that artificial intelligence is going to have a major impact on the security of voting and our physical process of voting. But it is going to have an impact on how you think about candidates and how and where and why you choose to vote. We saw deepfake videos of both major presidential candidates. We saw deepfake photographs here in Texas of House Speaker Dade Phelan. Overwhelmingly, I feel like people are getting better at knowing when something is a lie, but they're not as good at picking out what is the truth. And that could be a dangerous thing. That can be tough.
Yeah, there's definitely a need for media literacy that isn't taking place for young folks, and they're struggling with it themselves, right? Because they're doing exactly what they're saying. They're going to the things that are the way they see the world. And so we know that's going to be a challenge for kind of how people actually learn to navigate. And it's I remember years ago working with some folks from MIT, and they told us that almost everything that comes out of our mouth is an opinion. There are very few facts in the world. This has just exaggerated that notion, right? That this sense that there's actually no real set of facts that people have to kind of deal with because they're dealing with the artificial intelligence piece. But at the same time, you also see campaigns doing really interesting things, even going back to us in the Obama campaign, but even now today, in terms of trying to inform voters and going to them again. We were talking about podcasts earlier, but also the notion of literally putting ads into video games, putting ads in other places, and trying to once again,
things that years ago we wouldn't have thought
right.
of.
So once again, you see the potential there. That could be a helpful kind of piece but we're still struggling with where's the line of really being positive versus the negative. They're hand in hand, and I'm hoping we could figure out a way that kind of moves it in the right direction.
And campaign-wise, there's not a lot of overarching regulation on a lot of this right now. Texas does have a law that within 30 days of an election, deepfake videos are banned. There are punishments for that, though it's not clear if those are widely enforced. But we do have that law. But nationwide, there isn't anything yet that is in play.
Yeah, and the United States is one of the few countries that's actually playing around with this notion of what is truth, right? And so, you think about Elon Musk and taking over Twitter, which is now X, and him kind of loosening up the rules and not kind of going after folks in the same way that we saw some of that happening during COVID. And so, but there's that real question of, and it's been more of an American question than the rest of the world, of what is free speech?
Right.
And what is misinformation? What is disinformation? And where do we draw the line? No one has figured that out yet.
And that's going to be interesting, especially as we deal with generative AI and what that looks like 4 years from now, because you can still kind of tell right now, usually, but eventually maybe we won't be able to. So that'll be interesting to see. We have Matt Roy standing by with us right now. He has been covering one of the really tightly contested races, John Lujan and Christian Carranza. I'm seeing on my board that live shot just went down. This is live TV, folks, or live online version of TV. Gentlemen, I would love to get your thoughts on this concept of generative AI and the role it plays in elections. This is most likely something that you did not deal with as you were campaigning or running or in office. What challenges do you see this facing for people who are already elected and for people who want to be elected to have something like this playing a role?
I think it's pretty early to know what the implications of AI will be in the electoral context. AI essentially is a machine-assisted learning that allows the machine itself to learn and has some positive aspects in certain fields. In medicine, for example, it is possible to see 100,000 results of a diagnosis that a doctor makes, as opposed to the number that he can remember from his own career and his memory, and use that mass, the theory of large numbers to come to a better diagnosis. And there are other fields where it lends itself. I don't think we know yet the full implications of how it'll be used in politics, but as Charlie said a little bit ago, if we have to talk about regulation in order to keep it used in positive ways, because the potential for negative power is so great, then that's what we'll have to do as a society. Henry, you were going to say something?
No, just to concur with what you just said, it's a whole new world. And people have to learn, just like college professors are having to learn, for example, that when they go on ChatGPT or one of those websites and they've given an assignment to do essays on whatever subjects, that the student comes back with a beautiful essay, and how do they know it was not generated by AI? I mean, not just that, but they can make any one of us three here. They can generate a voice that moves with your mouth, and it looks like we're talking because they can generate the tones you also have. So, whoa, it's going to be hard to regulate those kind of mechanics. However, it shouldn't be hard to regulate to say you can't do any campaign commercials that have AI in them, but you can't regulate what you see on social media, and that's a whole different thing.
And to Henry's point, when we talk about AI and its applications, because it can apply to just about any endeavor, anything, from the student who basically says, give me a term paper on, the election of 1800 or something. But it's much more sophisticated than that. It's even much more sophisticated than, somewhere creating my likeness and, my voice and saying certain things that I'd never said, and I was never even in the place where this likeness of mine appears. That's child's play. That's going to be happening, and I think that's easy to regulate. What we don't know is, as you start adopting AI in different, let's say professions, I'm still a lawyer and such, what is the basis of AI? It still has to go and gather information. And, CPAs, you'd have one expert CPA say something in court, then you have the other one that say the opposite, and you say, how can that be? And one of them would always say, garbage in, garbage out, meaning that the basis for the opinion starts off with bad information. That's what you have to worry about. What is AI taking in as it goes out there, gathers all the data, and then comes out with the solutions and such? Now, what Henry here was saying, it can be a lifesaver, time-saving in many ways, where it can go through all these documents and then identify, something that's relevant and come up with a solution. But someone is still feeding it, and if you can control quality information and data, you're going to get a pretty decent product. But that's not what's happening. So in the early stages of, the first ChatGPT, well, that was crazy. I mean, that just went out and came back. I think NPR had something today on a recipe, and they asked the artificial intelligence the question something, how do I make the cake or something more solid or where it doesn't? And they said, use glue. Well, that's stuff. But those are like little silly examples. But it's happening, and we need to understand it, but we're still in charge in what we seek from it and what we put out there as far as quality underlying data on which it depends.
Switching gears, Jordan, we're just curious what the latest numbers are of the Cuellar race, because it was a little closer than we saw earlier.
I would be happy to show you. Let's come over here to the storyteller. Watch this, and my crew is amazing. They could even double box this so you can see both at the same time. Cuellar is ahead now. We've got about 58.2% reporting. He took the podium just a little bit ago. We're having some server issues, so we're hoping to check in with Yami here in a little bit about what he was saying and how he's feeling about this. This whole time, he's been very confident that in the end he is going to win this, and I know that's what you all were saying as well, is he's likely going to stay.
But the margin's not as much as a lot of us might have thought.
Yep.
No.
Jordan, can you cue up some of the national numbers just to get a
Why, yes, we can.
reading?
All right, let's go back to our New York Times map here. We are going to get that up for you right now. We have California that was just called. No surprise there. That one was called for VP Harris. Washington has been called as well. A lot of these numbers are starting to roll in these states. We've got a pretty solid red block down the center of the country right now.
Yeah.
Iowa.
Do you have
Iowa.
an ability to look at what's happening in the 7 swing states?
Yes.
Yes, Professor Sepulveda is saying yes, he is on that.
Sure, yeah. So it looks like we've got, like in Pennsylvania, we've got 70% of the vote in. Trump is up by 3 points.
It's over.
Okay. But what's interesting is you can go deeper here to kind of look into we know that the big counties, for example, for the vice president, those votes aren't in yet. So I think they're still seen as kind of they're still being designated as toss-ups.
Okay.
Michigan, it looks like we've got still early, only 29% of the vote in, so it's still early there. Wisconsin, 61.
And what's the
5 points up for Trump, but once again, same thing. You don't have Wayne County,
Detroit.
some of the other big ones. Yeah, but numbers not in yet. Wisconsin with 61% so far. Let's see, Trump up by 2 points. Same thing. That's big counties.
Milwaukee.
Right, Milwaukee's not in. Dane County, which is Madison. those are not in yet at the full level. So you're still seeing them all being kind of.
And what's the latest on Virginia?
Go
It's
back
not.
here.
It's not one of the traditional swings,
Right.
but it was in jeopardy earlier tonight.
Sure. Let me pull it back up again. It was when I looked at it a second ago. It looks like. So in Virginia, we've got. Come on back. I'm just trying to get the latest numbers.
It says that it is leaning Democrat at this moment. Again,
Right.
not everything called yet. It has Kamala Harris up.
She's up by 2 with 80% of the vote in. So once again, like we were talking about, some of those kind of northern kind of counties are starting to kind of come in. So it's listed as very likely Democratic.
So why not on the blue wall? What you're saying is that there's a likelihood that some of the big urban areas, all those votes have not come in.
They have not all come in yet, right? Now what's interesting is at the stage that they're at right now, it just changed a second ago. So they had them listed all as toss-ups. Still, Wisconsin at 62%, Michigan at 30%, and Pennsylvania at 72%, knowing that some of those votes still aren't in, but they've just moved them from toss-ups to leaning Republican.
Okay.
Right? And so, which is obviously not a good sign for the vice president. North Carolina, 87% of the vote in. Trump is up by 3%. That is seen as very likely Republican. We talked about Georgia earlier. Once again, it's closed in Georgia, but still a 3-point margin. But 93% of the vote in, that's also being designated as very likely Republican as well. Early figures in Arizona, 53% in, and Donald Trump is up by 0.2 of 1%. So,
That's surprising.
Yeah, so Arizona a little bit closer than folks had thought it was going to be, and that's a little bit more than half of the vote is in Arizona.
So I heard an analysis a few weeks ago that said even though there are 7 states that were swing states, there were some analysts that were saying there's a 60% chance that the same person, whichever one of them it was, would win 6 of the 7. So what happens, and Henry and I were talking about this a minute ago, there come to be sort of underlying trends that reach the whole country, especially now that our media is so national. Everyone, is listening to the larger trends, and it appears that as of this moment, you could say something was in the air in the last days that moved just not one state or one county, but is crossing across state lines and crossing a number of places.
Right.
You mentioned the blue ball a little while ago, and all 3 of them were plus Trump at the moment. So something is happening there. I have to tell you, with regret, as a Democrat, that I remember this exact pattern for Hillary.
Sure.
I kept, when Pennsylvania came in, I told my friends sitting around me, but Philadelphia's not in yet, and Pittsburgh's not in yet.
Right.
Well, it didn't matter. When they came in, the vote was such a great bulk from the rest of the state. Then we went over to Michigan, going farther west.
Right.
Same thing. Detroit's not in yet. Well, it didn't matter when Detroit came in. And then finally went to Wisconsin and said, but Milwaukee's not in. It didn't matter. So either the turnout was depressed in the big cities, that was in the Hillary case, and it was a little bit depressed. Some minority communities were angry at her because she had advocated things like 3 strikes and you're out and so forth. So it didn't stimulate the kind of enthusiasm she needed in the big cities, and the rural areas were coming in. So it just feels like that there's some of that at
kind
work
of going
here.
on.
Yeah, because the numbers in Georgia are bigger than people thought.
Right.
In North Carolina are bigger than people thought, and so in the blue wall, they don't have to be bigger than people thought. They just have to be enough, to keep them from going. And right now they're all plus Trump.
And the labor vote in some of these states that Henry is talking about as well is not rock solid for Harris this time out.
Well, and then Michigan, you have the Arab community,
the Muslim community,
community,
right
which
there.
is big. There's communities north of Detroit, where the entire city council and the mayor are Arab.
Yes. So I'll just jump in quickly. So Jen O'Malley Dillon, who's the campaign chair for the Harris campaign, she's just sent to the staff an email that says they feel good about the blue wall. pointing to outstanding vote counts in the main metro areas. What we do know is this race is not going to come into focus until the early morning hours.
So why would they put them pink at this point, leaning Trump?
Yeah, I think just because it's where it's at this particular point.
I see.
Yeah, is my guess. Yeah, but
Okay.
so once again, I think they're kind of once again on the data side, we know with all these polls that were kind of within the margin of error, but that also means you have a range, right? So when you look at those kind of 2-3 point kind of leads for Trump in some of these states, that's actually within the margin, right? So
Right.
it's not outside of what folks were expecting. In a strange way, with that race so tight with the data, you could have blowout on both sides. That's not happening tonight.
Yep.
But these kind of 2 to 3 point ranges, where it seems like most of them are right now,
Yep.
seems like about what folks thought was going to happen for the
So
poll.
what this analysis that I mentioned a
Yeah.
little bit ago said was you could have a situation where they were really, really close in each
Right.
state, but if that dynamic affects, let's say, 6 of the 7,
you could have
then
a, yeah, you
the
could run,
electoral
right,
vote
yeah,
looks like
sure,
a blowout.
Right, absolutely.
Because
yeah.
all of the electoral votes go to those winners, to the winner state.
Hey, Juan, do you have Nebraska Congressional District 2, the blue dot?
We do, yeah. Let me pull that up. I think what I saw it a second ago, it was still blue.
Yeah.
Let me see the margin.
Now,
Without
while you're
that
working
one.
on that, I'm curious, with the amount of results that we see in right now, all the states finalized, the percentages of states that are getting finalized, when do you foresee we will know for sure based on this?
Yeah, I think once again, what you see with the percentages now, they're coming in faster than we thought in some of the blue wall states. But I think even what you saw from the campaign manager out to the rest of the staff, it's going to be at least tomorrow,
Yeah.
particularly because it's this close. And once again, if Nevada or Arizona come into play, particularly Nevada, if those become important and it doesn't become someone picking up all the other battlegrounds, it'll take a little bit longer in the week as well.
What I've been reading for the last few days is Pennsylvania and Arizona's systems
Right.
are such that they will be late. Pennsylvania, because they were not allowed to touch.
To count until Pennsylvania, Wisconsin were not allowed to open the ballots until today.
Correct.
Nevada, which is mostly mail-in balloting now, but like I mentioned, as long as you have your postmark today, you have 4 days for it to be accepted,
Delivered.
right? So it could be November the 9th
Yeah.
before we get the full
And
Nevada
even though they
numbers.
can't touch those ballots, a lot of the early vote around the country has leaned more conservative
Right.
in most states.
Yeah.
And Charlie, looks like Omaha is still up. This is early, but the vice president in Omaha, in the county, is up by 12 points.
So going back to the early thoughts of the 43 states that are not the 7 swing states,
Right.
nothing is unexpected at this point.
Those have all played out, right?
Every single one of them is what they where they were projected to be,
Right.
with the exception of Virginia, which nobody expected to be this close. What is it again, Virginia?
So Virginia, once again, I think we're. Let me go back. But what's interesting is even with those numbers, it's still they still have it as very likely Democrat. So she's gone up. So she's gone up.
Probably Arlington and
Right, has started to
Alexandria
kinda
and those
come in.
areas.
Yeah. Now I did see that even though she's going to win Virginia, and those places have helped her, she did not do as well in some of those counties as President Biden did in 2012.
Yeah, so something's
Loudoun
in the air there. Something
Yeah.
is happening nationally that gives Trump a little bit extra oomph.
Right.
And has given him a little extra oomph tonight. Whether it's potentially that the women's vote didn't pan out to be what people thought,
Right.
or minority areas are not coming out at the rate that was expected, or it's just a massive Trump turnout among his base. I don't know. Can't
Right.
tell from what we have, from the information we have.
Yeah, you're seeing a little bit here. I'm seeing a little bit here right now. They're talking about, particularly in some of the college towns, that once again, not horrible, but she's still doing a little bit worse than Biden did. And obviously, when the race is that close,
That's amazing.
That doesn't help, right? So.
One of the national conversations that we've been seeing throughout the course of this election over the last year is the amount of time that it takes to get a final answer and to get finalization on a lot of these votes. I would love to get your thoughts on, do you think there is a better way for the United States to do things and for certain states and counties to do things so that we have those answers quicker, like some of the larger counties across the nation do, where by 8, 9 p.m. they're pretty much done?
I don't think so, because it is almost written in scripture that the states get to decide how they count their votes and how they set up their elections. And I just can't imagine anyone wanting to nationalize the election and get away with it.
Well, there's an election assistance commission, wonderful folks. It's basically advisory in nature. And what you try to do is try to have some uniformity. And it's been impossible because, like Henry was saying, basically the states are in charge on how they want to run their elections. Right. And then you start getting into the counties and the equipment that they're going to buy. Now you have commissioner's court. I mean, you can't get, I think there is probably, you know, where you have a printed ballot and it goes through and you have paper, you have a paper ballot, but you electronically vote on it, and then it's, if we went back just to a paper ballot and you marked it and then a machine went through it, I'm not sure.
By most accounts, we have come a long way. Back
to
the days of Duval County. I remember we had some colleagues in the southern states, in Alabama one time, where one of our former colleagues, Charlie in Washington, said, you know, down in Alabama, I said, not too long ago, when we called to see what kind of vote came in from a certain county, the answer on the phone was, how many do you need? And so at least we're not like that anymore. We have technology. Right. And when I ran for Congress as well, there would be neighborhood, they called them cañoneras. I'm not sure why in Laredo, but they were the people who gathered the ballots in the neighborhood, and no one filled out their own ballot. They turned their ballot over. And so anyway, we've come a long way from those days.
Yeah, and the other thing I'll point out quickly is, no surprise, because the country has become so polarized, you have states that are dominated by red or blue, and no surprise, in the blue, so you have two systems now nationally. Each state can set up its own set of rules, but the blue states have made it easier for access to voter registration. If you're in some of the battleground states today, you could show up in Wisconsin and have same-day registration and vote, to Texas, where you can't register to vote online, right? And so the red states have made it even more restrictive, and for them, they'll talk to you about election integrity. And then on the other side, on the blue, you'll see these other kind of ways to kind of make it easier.
It's not quite that simple, because I've been in a few states this fall, like North Carolina, where you could register to vote until Saturday at 3 p.m.
Right.
And that's very different than than our registration date in Texas, which is what, a month before or so to register. So you could register literally till 3 o'clock, and so the get out the vote people were getting people who were not registered to go out, and that's one of the conservative states with a conservative legislature. And there are several other places. Where was it I was watching on television today? Wisconsin, you could register today and vote today.
Right, right. Wisconsin today, yeah. So
but I also, well, you know, that's good. But I also say, man, if you want to vote, register early. I don't understand why people just don't do it early. What do you have more important to do? Watch another streaming series or
of course.
Or be on TikTok
video
longer?
Ask some of them,
that's right.
I don't give a you know what. If you're rich or poor, get your butt to register to vote,
but
well in advance.
You're gonna miss a video game.
I know. That's what I'm saying. You know, that's what. So there's no excuse for any American to not register to vote in plenty of time.
Well, I mean, you go to get your driver's license or renew it, you got a voter registration card, right? So we've made registration as easy as possible. It still comes down that you're lucky if you get 64% participation of the registered voters. I mean, it's just one thing after another. But I think you're right, Henry, on the reliability, on the accuracy, where you don't have the opportunities to basically cheat and everything else. Oh, we've come many, eons.
It looks like what the Secretary of State in Georgia, he's Republican, but what he did completely transformed Georgia's principles of voting.
Yeah.
And he not only is describing a more accurate system, but one that would get the results out tonight. Tonight, Georgia will know what its vote is in his expectation.
And why is it that the Californians who think they're so much above us and all the technology and advancements, they can't get their there are going to be House races that are close in California tonight that we won't know the results for at least a couple of weeks. Why is an advanced state like that, I ask rhetorically, why is an advanced state like that one of the slowest ones in the nation to get their vote in?
Will you stop picking on California? They're going to be our neighbors soon.
Well, California's gone primarily all mail-in balloting, right?
Yeah.
Right? So that slows it down, right? So.
I want to take us back over here to our balance of power graphics just so you can kind of see how things are shaping up in the national House and in the Senate. Professor Sepulveda, you and I had been talking a few days ago about the impact of what these races are going to be depending on who the president is. Does anything stick out to you yet? I know it's still early with the way that things are swinging here for the House.
Yeah, and I think we'd have to look behind what these numbers actually are. But
Right.
once again, this has been a theme we've been talking about all night. Of the 435 races, there are probably a dozen to a dozen and a half that are actually competitive, right? So it's almost nothing.
Juan, there's about 6 races in New York State,
right,
which should have been called by now, I would think, or close, that will have a lot to do with what the makeup of the House.
Right. So New York, California. So there's but we got about a dozen and a half that are really. So we'll have to kind of see where those races.
Yeah.
That's going to determine the balance. Now, what's interesting is that not just what's going to happen in the House, but this is going to be rare for whoever wins the White House, that they will not have both the House and the Senate.
Right.
Yeah.
That's kind of a typical trend that has happened, and so it's very likely. I mean, you're looking at the Senate; it looks very much like we thought was going to happen. Is that the Democrats are not going to be able to hold on to the Senate?
Right.
I was looking a second ago. It looks like Sherrod Brown's in trouble in Ohio. That's forget about. Tester in Montana was always going to be a bad one, but they were kind of counting on Sherrod Brown. Tammy Baldwin, Jackie Rosen out in Nevada to kind of make sure at least kept it close.
And the independent, in Nebraska.
Is the Tester race done?
No, it's not done, but it was not. It's still early, but we know that was always going to be one that unless something dramatic.
He was down about 8 in the polls.
And Henry was just asking another one I was curious about too. Nebraska, is that done?
It is not done, and I haven't. I'll check to go see what the Senate numbers are there. But
okay.
That was one that was probably going to be would be a surprise. It was starting to get people interested to see if it potentially could have an impact.
Now, as we look for those, I do want to ask, for our people who are watching at home that maybe are not as politically savvy, what impact will this have to have the House and the Senate not necessarily siding with whoever is in the White House? What is that going to mean for the people watching?
And I tell folks, if you think about it, it's a really interesting way when you think about the presidency, the House, and the Senate. If you could answer 2 questions, who wins the White House and who gets in control of Congress, you get 4 different stories. So the most likely story is whether it is Vice President Harris or former President Trump. Both of them are going to inherit a divided Congress, which means you get stalemate, right? You're not going to be able to get stuff. You'll be able to get some things done. You're going to try really hard, but you do not start. What typically happens when you come in is that you have both the House and the Senate. We had that in the first term with Obama, that you get a couple years to get some stuff done. Biden had that recently as well too. Trump had that. That's not going to happen this time. And so in a strange way, no matter who wins the White House, it's going to be really tough for them to get anything through Congress.
Absolutely. And then for all of you watching at home, that could mean too a lot of these promises that are being made on both sides of the aisle, things you might be excited about. You might not see them at the rate that you're hoping for, because if you can't get it passed, you can't get it passed.
Well, that might be a good thing.
Yeah, and for you guys, that's a whole nother. So 64% of the vote in Nebraska. Osborne is up by barely, by 0.2%. So actually it is less than 1%, right?
Wow.
So that's 64% of the vote. So
he's the independent?
He's the independent, right? And so Deb Fisher is she's down, right? So, but at 64% of the vote, it's almost tied right now.
Yeah.
Here, just to get a sense, another important race that we wanted to hear about in a battleground state. Almost half of the vote, 49% of the vote in. Ruben Gallego is up by 7 points.
He's been polling 6 up.
Right, so he's up by 7 against Kerry Lake
He was polling 6 up when Kamala was down 3, which is a real anomaly. But Ruben Gallego is an ex-Marine who really positioned himself as a centrist.
Right.
And just a lot of people are repelled by Kerry Lake for some reason that I don't understand. But it was just everybody you talk to just instantly said, absolutely not,
Right.
cannot support her. Yeah.
So it looks like Rubin is in a good spot right now. Here's the one I think a lot of people were a little bit surprised at right now, and it's getting close to the end. With 91% of the vote in Ohio, Bernie Moreno is up by 5 points over Sherrod Brown. So
Yeah.
that's, I think we knew it was going to be a tough one, but he wasn't doing that poorly in the polling.
Well, remember, Vance is from Ohio.
Yeah.
And they're super enthusiastic
Sure.
about having the vice presidency, and so supported Trump, and they're spilled over to the Senate race, I'm sure.
Absolutely. Pennsylvania is another tight one. 76% of the vote in. David McCormick has a 2% lead over Bob Casey.
Whoa.
Wow.
That was
Yeah.
another one that we knew it was going to be a tight
That
one
was
there.
tight.
McCormick is thought to be a serious candidate,
Right.
not just a.
Right, he's not
you know,
Dr. Oz.
Yeah.
Michigan, that's still early, only 32% of the vote. But Wisconsin with 67% of the vote. This is all kind of mirroring the presidential. Tammy Baldwin is down by 2 points, right? And so
Wow.
with 67% down to Eric Hovde. So, right, playing out kind of matching what's happening at the presidential level.
Right.
But still a good chunk of the vote.
And
once
Michigan,
again,
what's the Senate race in Michigan?
Alyssa Slotkin, this is to kind of
Yeah.
to
She
replace Debbie Stavenow's seat.
You're right.
Right.
So it's really early. It's only a third of the vote in, and Mike Rogers is leading by 5 points. But that's really early, and I think a lot of the big parts of the state, Wayne County, places like that, not in yet. But that's that other. I'm thinking of that. Any other of the big tester stuff is so early. It's only 7% of the vote in. He's down by 18, but it's literally 7% of the vote. So it's just kind of starting to trickle.
Yeah, he's going to
out,
get.
out west. But those are the big races kind of on the Senate side.
I do want to take you all through. We're getting some races called for Texas congressional representatives. Michael McCall in District 10 has been called the winner of that race. Not a big surprise. August Pfluger in District 11 was running unopposed. District 12, Craig Goldman named the winner, a Republican there. Randy Weber has won over Rhonda Hart, who we talked about a little bit earlier. District 15 has not been called yet. That is Monica De La Cruz and Michelle Vallejo. De La Cruz is up 54.8% right now. Michelle Vallejo has 45.2%. So still about 67% of those votes coming in, but that is one of the key ones that we're watching for you.
Yeah, and Goldman in Fort Worth is a significant one because it's being vacated by a very senior member who's retiring, Kate Granger. It was a former mayor before being a member of Congress, and very well respected by not just Republicans but by both sides. And that was a
she was a great mayor too.
Yeah,
in
tough
Fort
primary.
Worth.
Yeah.
But can you go back to the San Antonio propositions? We haven't looked at them in a long time.
Let me work on those. Yes.
We knew what they were when the early vote was in, but I haven't seen anything with the rest of the vote.
And after that, Jordan, maybe Lujan.
Yes. We had a live shot from Matt Roy up a bit ago. We're having some issues with the live shots right now, but we can check in on the polling for that. Let me work on these charter amendments. All right, so Proposition A, what we're seeing right now, that is the Ethics Review Board proposition. That is going more in favor.
What is the percentage of the vote count?
That percentage, check right here.
Yeah, hopefully there's something a little bit more updated. What I'm still seeing it's just the early vote numbers.
Yeah.
Wow. Wonder why it's so slow.
And I think they had mentioned, Jackie was talking earlier, they thought the numbers were going to come in later this year. So I don't see updated numbers yet.
Okay.
So they've got a ways to go.
Right. We're looking at that right now. It's those same early
Yeah,
vote
it's all early
totals
vote,
from what
yeah.
I'm seeing. We don't have anything more
53,000 for Proposition C.
Right.
Yeah, 53%. Yeah.
To 46, yeah. But once again, it's a lot of votes that still need to come in.
Yeah.
Let me check on that. All right, I'm going to go back to Lujan. While we check for that, we're going to see how he's doing.
And LaHood.
And LaHood, yes,
Right.
we can get that as well. Okay.
77% of the vote in, Mark LaHood at 52, Laurel Swift at 47.
Okay.
So
In Lujan.
that's obviously that's a Republican seat. John Lujan with 77% of the vote in, 51.6 to 48.4.
Wow, that's a close race.
So it's a close one, yeah.
Yeah, it was expected though. So.
Yes, we
And
were
that's-
expecting that one to be closer. We've been following up with both candidates throughout the evening, not knowing which way this would go. Again, that's a very close race if you're just joining us.
And that's
for
only
school vouchers.
77%. So there's
77% of the vote
a
in,
lot
right.
of time yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of eyes on that one here in San Antonio, especially. That's a lot of South Bexar County. So a lot of the people in our immediate area,
Yep.
that's going to be very consequential for them as well. All right. I'm still looking for more updates on those propositions here. Let's see here. In the meantime,
Cuellar, anything more recent on Cuellar?
Cuellar, I can take you back to this map over here. I'm going to walk back to Storyteller, guys, over here. We can look, because this is going to pull up the latest. Right now we have 73% reporting, 51.4 for Cuellar. He is ahead here. We just received word a little bit ago that he won Zapata County, which was a bigger one. That's one that he had been looking at. So 51.4 to 48.6. Is this closer than what you were anticipating for 73% reporting?
Absolutely.
For sure.
What do you think that it's
Unless the last
indictments or turnout? Like, what might be causing this?
Well, 73% means that 27% is not in yet. That's a whole quarter of the vote.
Yeah.
So if all of that is Webb County,
Yeah.
then it's not going to be close in the end.
And he was up at the podium. We're working on getting that sound as well. But yeah, definitely consequential there. We can check in on.
By the way, we were all happy to hear that your reporter, who's fantastic down in Webb County, said hello to Henry from the three of us.
Yeah.
Oh yes. Well, you asked her to. You know she'll do it. I'm gonna come back over here now. So while we talk about Representative Lujan and the Christian Carranza race, that's one of the key ones for school vouchers. If my team can, we actually did a whole story about the impact that this election is going to have on school vouchers, which is something that we've been talking about in Texas ever since the last session. We've seen a lot of movement on that. That is a story from Ethan Trejo. So I'm hoping that we have that we can show to you.
Did the governor need to pick up more seats to guarantee the voucher vote, or did he have it already before tonight?
He did not have it. It didn't pass several times. There were special sessions called.
No, I know, but the question is, were there races he needed to win tonight to have the comfortable majority that he wants?
Yes, and this race was one that he was looking to get. There were a couple in our area.
Yeah.
So Ethan lays out a lot of what those are, and then specifically which ones.
LaHood would be another
Yes,
linchpin.
absolutely.
because that's why they went after Allison.
Yes, absolutely. All right, it does look like we've got that queued up, so we are going to show that to you. Here is Ethan Trejo.
It's a controversial topic. Texas officials have been going back and forth to determine whether or not to adopt the school voucher system. Neither side has been reluctant to give up their stance, but with the upcoming election, we could see all of that change. 4 districts, 44, 80, 118, and 121 are all in play for politicians looking to claim their stance on the future of education.
Give people a coupon of $8,000 of value that you would then apply to go to a private school or to basically a non-public school.
Professor of Political Science at UTSA John Taylor says the major seats up for grabs could set Governor Abbott with the majority vote to get his system passed.
He needs 76 votes in the state house next spring, because if all of a sudden Swift and Carranza win, Abbott's not going to have his 76 votes.
We reached out to some of the school districts in the area to gauge how they were feeling about the potential system and how they will adjust if vouchers are approved.
Having vouchers that do not come in with additional funding for ISDs does put us in a detrimental place, but we've been preparing for these things.
The states that have implemented, we've started modeling, we've started asking, okay, what did you see year 1, year 2?
We also reached out to the Texas Private School Association, who currently provide education to 290,000 students in Texas, but they were unavailable. On our News 4 website, we asked you how you felt about school vouchers, and the reaction was split as well. Some were against using tax dollars for funding private schools, while others expressed their feelings about spending their money how they want. The ultimate decision will fall on the general voter.
It's what you think is best for your kids.
Ethan Trejo, News 4, San Antonio.
Again, that was Ethan Trejo, and we already know Governor Greg Abbott has called a press conference tomorrow specifically about school vouchers. We're going to have a better picture as we head into tonight about how that's going to go. It's been such a hot topic here in Texas recently, so it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. For our local House races, that has been the key issue.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where the governor needs, it's a strange kind of partnership between Democrats and the rural Republican legislators, and he took a number of those out in the primaries. So it's going to be, in San Antonio, the 2 seats play into that as well. He needs them, not just the Republicans who are on board to get that supermajority.
Absolutely, and we got an email just a bit ago that Don McLaughlin, the former mayor of Uvalde, who's running in House District 80 for Tracy King's previous seat, he has declared victory, and he would be another vote for vouchers on the Republican side. So we're seeing the numbers tick up as the evening goes on. Tomorrow we'll have more of a clear picture of what that's going to end up looking like here in Texas. But it took several special sessions. It took a lot of time, and those special sessions are not cheap.
Right.
So
yeah, and now the question is going to be, what does that piece of legislation look like, right?
Right.
They've already been talking about what kind of, is it targeted, is it universal? The details are going to come into play now.
And a lot of the cities that we've been talking to throughout the evening, they have had things on the ballot about teacher raises and a lot of school funding. In previous special sessions and sessions, that stuff was tied to vouchers. They were hand in hand for school funding and for vouchers. So will it look like that again? All good questions that we are going to be looking for answers to as tonight goes on. Speaking of Don McLaughlin and that House District 80 race, we've got Destiny Fuller, who's in Uvalde. We showed you those whiteboards earlier tonight. Destiny, it looks a lot more calm out there than the last time we spoke with you. What's going on?
Calm, Jordan, try empty. This place has cleared out. We've got a couple of people who are straggling in because they've left the whiteboards up for the night for people who are wanting to see the results of that election where Don McLaughlin declared victory. He had well over 50% of the vote. Last we checked, he was sitting at 58%, excuse me. I talked to him a little bit before those numbers came out, and he said plain as day that this vote and this election, he plans on representing all people no matter what their party affiliation is, and he's ready to get to work, and that will start on January 14th.
And Destiny, is there anything else that former Mayor Don McLaughlin told you? I know that he has been one of the really key figures after the Robb Elementary School shooting. Do you think that will also play a role in the way he goes forward and how he represents in the Texas House?
Yeah, Jordan, I actually asked him that specifically, using his experience on a bigger scale. He mentioned some of the things that have happened in Uvalde as his time. He mentioned things like COVID, a snowstorm, the loss of one of the large plants out here, and ultimately, who could forget the Robb Elementary tragedy. He says that he plans on using that and also his experience as a businessman and a business owner to bring people together and to go and demand things in Austin. He says specifically that he may not get 100% of what he wants up in Austin, but that the people in Austin also will not get 100% of what they want while he's around. He says he plans on being a voice for all of the people in South Texas and specifically in District 80.
All right, Destiny Fuller from Uvalde tonight. Destiny, thank you. Get back here safely whenever you are cleared to get back here. It's a very interesting case. We talked about Tracy King and how long he held that seat and how he was kind of the exception to the rule when it came to a lot of things. Do you foresee any challenges for his successor in a seat like that?
You know, I think, as we were discussing earlier, just because of, it reminded me a little bit of Henry Cuellar's seat, when you've got someone who's known by the community and in this case has gotten a lot of attention in a positive way of trying to kind of work in a really tragic situation, that's going to play to your favor. And the district itself is kind of a little bit trickier compared to some of the other ones. But with that kind of a turn, what we saw in terms of the actual end results, I think I don't think it will, to be honest. I think because it sounds like he fits the district. We talked about, you know, Tracy kind of being a little bit more of a moderate to conservative, and so this seems to kind of play right into that as well.
Absolutely. We are waiting to circle back with Matt Roy, who is with the Lujan campaign. We are waiting to see his live shot when that happens. We will let you know about that. Now, as of right now, just kind of checking in on what our Texas officials are saying online. We've been following kind of what they have been posting tonight. We know that Attorney General Ken Paxton and our Agriculture Commissioner Sid Miller are actually in Florida at Mar-a-Lago tonight with the Trump campaign. Neither of those candidates have addressed the nation yet. We will bring it to you if they do here in the next little bit. But like we were saying earlier, both campaigns are kind of waiting for this to be a longer evening. They're not, nobody has called victory yet. And I did want to ask if that surprised you, because we know we saw former President Trump declare an early victory in 2020. In relation to now, what time was that? And are you surprised that we have not seen something like that tonight?
So that was kind of early, kind of the next into moving into in Wednesday morning. And once again, he was in a different place. He had started in a stronger piece, and as more mail-in ballots were coming in, he was starting to lose. You have the opposite happening this time. So that doesn't mean he still won't do it, but I'm sure his campaign is saying at this point, we're actually looking okay. There's no need to kind of go do this yet. Play the numbers out a little bit, and we'll kind of see what happens. But there's no doubt that if the numbers really do shift back to the vice president, that seems to be a tactic they've been teeing up for a while and preparing to do this. So the question is going to be when it happens.
And from a campaign standpoint, what is the strategy there if you've got both sides that feel that they have won and are declaring victory when maybe not all of these states have been called?
Yeah, I would be shocked if the vice president would declare victory, right? So I think that's going to be the norm, right? This plays back into, once again, we were talking about earlier how former President Trump has put so much of an emphasis on election integrity, and kind of, over the weekend saying they're already cheating in Pennsylvania. So setting up to kind of be able to challenge the numbers that are coming out. So that seems to be part of the strategy, right? And so you'll see the two campaigns, once again, have very different responses to the current state of the race.
All right. Well, it looks like we do have Matt Roy now. Our live servers have been kind of going back and forth, so we do have Matt Roy with us now. He is with Representative Lujan. Matt, what's the update from out there? What are the results looking like?
All right, yes, absolutely standing with Representative Lujan and some of his family here. Guys, let's make some noise here. We got a good race going on. So Representative Lujan.
You asked for noise.
Yeah, I mean, I did ask for noise, you're right. We got 30, 40 people still here. Representative Lujan winning by about 2,300 votes right now, with about 150 out of 302 precincts reporting. How are you guys feeling at this point in the night?
Well, of course, I'm feeling good right now, and I was real thankful when we came in and we had a lead in the early vote, and then just to continue to carry that, I'm excited about it. But the night's not over yet. We have a tough district, and I want to recognize that. So it's tougher for me because everybody's excited, everybody's happy, and everybody's congratulating me.
You got to remain calm.
But I got to remain calm because I got to feel it myself. And right now, I'm still waiting.
So you've made a point of saying that this is a 52% Democratic district right now. Right. You've had this district, control of it at least since the special election in 21, won it again in 22. What's that say about this district and you as a candidate to win a Democratic district?
Well, I think what's helped me win a Democratic district is not so much playing the R and the D against each other, but just doing the work and saying, man, I want to work for our youth, for our families, for the elderly, for public safety. Those things are very, very important to me, and that's what really resonates very strong in our community. And people recognize that when I get emails and stuff that I'm the only Republican they've ever voted for, things like that, that means a lot to me because it means I'm doing the right things and I'm not just playing party politics, and I think people are getting tired of that.
The main differences between you and Ms. Carranza were really two things came down to women's rights and abortion, something that you said on the radio back in September, I believe. Do you want to address those comments that you made and the kind of the outcry that the Carranza campaign made out of it?
Well, see, and that's the thing that bothers me the most. When we have these contentious issues like that, I was always wondering, man, why didn't they talk about all the juvenile justice stuff where we work, or the fentanyl poisoning and awareness, the laws that we passed on that. We had fentanyl moms here, angel moms that have lost their loved ones to that. Things like that to me are what's important. And then when you start putting and saying, okay, we're going to do it on an abortion issue, and you said this, and then misconstruing what I say, and then politicizing it, that's what people are tired of. And it's bad because not only is it bad for our community, but it's not the example that we want for our community, especially we want to better it.
You were also very different with Ms. Carranza on on the voucher issue, the ESA issue. You voted for it last session, something that she is staunchly against. It's a very, very divisive issue in the state right now. So can you just, for once and for all, state your stance on the voucher issue and how you might lean in this upcoming session if you do win?
Well, I've told everybody, they know where I stand. I'm for parental choice. I want parents to have that opportunity to choose where they send their kids to school. I want to make it fair because I'm a big public school guy. My children all went to public school. I went to public school. I want to fully fund our public schools. We have enough money to fully fund our public schools and then have the parents give them that choice and that opportunity so they don't have to put their kids into failing school districts. And I have adopted boys, and I had that happen to me where I had a failing school district and I had to move my boys elsewhere. And I want other people to have that same opportunity.
You guys got a couple more precincts to close before you really celebrate, but you're feeling okay right now?
I'm feeling good right now. I'm feeling good. I'm not going to lie. I feel better than I did even when I first came in. We had won early voting, but we had no boxes in. And now with half the boxes in and we still got a good lead, I'm pretty confident.
Thank you so much, Representative.
Thank you.
Jordan, back to you.
All right, Matt, thank you very much. And you heard it there, Representative Lujan saying that if he does end up winning this, which as of right now it appears that he will, he is a vote for vouchers. We've been talking about what that's going to mean for the Texas State House, what it's going to mean for public schools. We have a couple things in the pipeline for you. We are hoping to hear from Jay Avila, who is at Bexar County elections. We are hoping to hear from Congressman Cuellar, who I believe has declared victory. We're going to check on that for you. We're also told that Colin Allred is about to come to the podium in Dallas with Michael Adkison. So we're checking on all of those things. I do want to let you know, we talked to David Bradley a little bit earlier in the evening about that Amarillo prop. It would have effectively made it illegal to use local streets and highways to obtain an out-of-state abortion. Resoundingly rejected. Just like David was telling us for the early vote. Early vote was leaning no. We now know with pretty much final answer that has been rejected, and that is a deeply conservative portion of the state. So we've been watching that one. Interesting turnout there. When we get Jay Avila, we're hoping to talk about those San Antonio propositions that are going to mean so much for our city council and our city government here, our city manager. So we are hopefully going to check in with him here in just a little bit. And again, we're told Colin Allred is going to come to the podium. Ted Cruz has already been declared the winner here in Texas for that Senate seat, keeping it for another term. All right, let's go back to our nationwide map for a second. We have a couple new things happening here. Right now, Kamala Harris at 200, former President Donald Trump at 230. It looks like Washington and Oregon are in now from the last time we checked, Colorado. Anything sticking out to you about what we're seeing so far?
So one thing is that the first of the 7 battleground states has been declared. And so former President Trump has won North Carolina. And that's the first one that's
called
it about
30.
Yeah, so
Georgia.
Virginia that was already kind of done. So that one we were worried about a little bit earlier. So Virginia has officially been kind of declared for the vice president.
Okay.
But everything you're hearing out right now is that it's for the vice president. It's all about getting through the blue wall.
Yes, it is.
And that it's about overperforming in the urban areas, right? She's going to have to not just match what had happened before for President Biden.
Yep.
She's going to have to overperform.
Yep.
But that seems to be the path that the campaign is talking about is still. Now, once again, what's interesting is at least what we see here up on the map, Arizona's really tight. So you've got that piece kind of going, but they know they're going to have a combination of the blue wall to get it done.
In Arizona, their electoral votes went to Trump in 2016 and Biden in 2020. We're closely watching that one. It is within just tenths of a point based on the counts right now, with 53% of votes in. Donald Trump has 49.8%. Kamala Harris has 49.4%. It does on this map say that they are leaning right. So definitely something to watch there. New Mexico, it says they're at about 80% right now. Pennsylvania at about 82%. Georgia, let's look
Georgia,
here.
more than 95%, so it hasn't been declared, but former President Trump is still up by 3 points.
In Georgia.
Yeah, so it looks like very likely that he's going to carry a second battleground state tonight.
Former President Trump did win Georgia in 2016. Biden won it in 2020, but narrowly. So we are seeing another close-ish race here in Georgia tonight. The Texas Tribune has just declared U.S. Rep. Monica de la Cruz as the winner over Michelle Vallejo. That was one that we had been watching closely. What is that going to mean for the overall makeup now?
Obviously, that helps the Republicans, right? They needed to hold on in order to to hold on to the House, and so that was one of the target ones. We talked about that dozen to a dozen and a half. That takes one off the table for them in a positive way.
Definitely. So we're watching all of this come in. It does look like Colin Allred is at the podium right now on LiveView 3, if we can take that. Again, Ted Cruz has been declared the winner of this race, but we're going to listen in on what Congressman Allred is saying.
Violence. We settle it at the ballot box. And if we don't win, then we dust ourselves off and we come back the next time. Okay? I don't know what's going to happen in any of the other races around the country, but I know this. It's going to require patriots like all of you and people all across our state and our country to stay engaged. This 250-year project of ours is one that is very tenuous. Every generation of Americans is responsible for keeping it going for another generation. We are not going to be the ones who drop the baton. And whatever happens in this election, I want you all to remember who we are. Don't ever lose sight of it. Don't ever let anybody tell you that it's not who we are. And I want to thank you again. God bless you.
All right, that was Colin Allred. We are looking at the data now from the Texas Secretary of State's website. About 10% difference there between Ted Cruz and Colin Allred. Very different from a lot of the polling that we saw over the course of this election, but also not necessarily surprising. We've been saying all night that our experts did not believe that it was going to end up being as close as it was projected, and that is what we saw.
Yeah, once again, Beto loses to Abbott by 11. Looks like he's down by 10. That seems to be the Texas norm. Like we mentioned, if he would have got into single digits, that would have been a little bit better, moving in the right direction. But it looks like it's right at double digits right now. So kind of where Texas has been, right? So
definitely. We are looking at some of these other races that we are closely watching now. It looks like we have Taylor Whartonby up on LiveView 4. Are we able to talk to Taylor? We're unable to talk to Taylor. Don't you love live? I love live. So as the night continues, it's about 10:53 right now on election night. What's up, Jordan? I would love to hear from Cuellar. Perfect. All right. As you likely know at this point, Yami Virgen has been out in Laredo with the Cuellar campaign. Things were looking for a while closer than maybe we expected for Congressman Cuellar, but those numbers obviously still coming in. It could lean heavily in his direction. So Yami got to catch up with Congressman Cuellar out there in Laredo. We were not able to take it live, but we have a little bit for you now. All right, well, you could see Congressman Cuellar. We could not hear him. We will work on that for you. We now have Taylor Whartonby. She has been covering the Tony Gonzalez-Santos Limon race. You heard our panel say earlier in the evening that they did not expect this one to be close. I won't name names. Some of them only knew the Tony Gonzalez name in this race. So, Taylor, I wanted to ask you, so the Gonzalez campaign didn't necessarily want to interview tonight. I know they sent out a statement about this victory. What are you hearing so far about the declaration of victory and what this is going to mean moving forward?
Yeah, like I said earlier, we weren't able to get an interview with Tony Gonzalez. We reached out to their campaign, but they did provide us a statement, and they said that his message has been clear, and that is to protect the freedoms of Americans. And he's looking forward to going back to Washington and putting that to work. So that's all that we have right now, and I'm going to send it back to you.
All right, Taylor, thank you very much. It is now 10:55 p.m. on election night. We still have results rolling in. So what I want to do right now, for our panel across the room from me, from Professor Sepulveda, obviously results are going to keep rolling in. What is something that you want the people of Texas to take away or watch for or learn from what we have seen in this election? It can be from any of the topics that we've covered tonight, and we've covered many. But what would you want them to take away?
You know, I think on the Texas side, take away that it looks like no real surprises, right? Still kind of the red state that we are. I'll be curious to see the details of that urban-rural split again, but it seems like it has played itself out in the way that it typically does. On the presidential side, it looks like we're going to have to see whether or not the vice president can overperform in those urban areas in the blue walls, and then see if Arizona plays any little bit in a piece of his all. Those seem to be the two big pieces remaining on the presidential side.
All right, my panel across the room, what do you think are the takeaways? What questions are you still asking, seeing these results roll in tonight?
I would say to my fellow Texans, all of us, let's just chill now. The election for Texas is pretty much done. It's going to be decided a little later on the national front. And just try to rid ourselves of some of the anger that's been out there for a while for both sides, and just move forward in a positive way. We have a lot to be grateful for in this great state and in this great country. And we should start to think more positively about that and moving forward together, not just in a segmented population.
I've always felt that I've always had a deep respect for the wisdom of the voters. And I don't say that just in a self-serving way because I want to pander to the voters, but because in my experience, there's a certain kind of wisdom in the collective action. People mull things over, they process it, and then on election day they kind of give you their judgment. And if you're a public official and listening carefully, you may learn something. And I think Democrats have something to learn in Texas, and at least for the moment, looking at where we are across the country. And that is that people really want you to want action on their lives and their concerns. The number one concern that most of Americans in the exit polls have reflected is there was concern about the economy. It's not completely fair to suggest that this is a bad economy, because we were in a hell of a mess with the pandemic, and came through that, had to do spending for the pandemic that created an inflation. The inflation really upset people for a long time, and it still is. Prices have gone higher. Even though the inflation is now down, there's still a sense that people came out the losers. And we just have to be more responsive to that and leave aside some of the side issues that distract us in politics and try to focus on what matters to people, what makes their lives better, and really be as broad in our reach as we can. And Democrats, in order to be relevant in Texas, there's now a lot of elections where no Democrat has won statewide office, and throughout the South. And as we can see, even in parts of the nation that have been traditionally Democratic, it's very, very tight at best. Democrats have some work to do. And some of that work has to be in the form of constructive opposition. If we lose the Senate, for example, if we have a very tight House, constructive opposition focused not on the politics, but on what touches people's lives.
I think if I was asking anything of the voter or the citizen, is that somehow we've become a grievance society. All we do is complain. The glass is always half full. And it's just exhausting our national spirit. And it makes you insecure. It makes you fearful. The next thing after insecurity and being in fear is anger. And we're seeing so much of that. How do we, as citizens, somehow, and Henry was referring to our institutions or to our schools and our churches, how do we get our sense of community again? I don't know if we do. I think Henry was saying that You know, great democracies and great societies have lifespans. And this sounds like a real downer, but I'm thinking it always will rest, first and foremost, with the people. And I'm hoping that leadership in both parties don't resort, again, to appealing to those grievances in a way that is destructive. And again, that you negotiate, that you compromise. And that compromise is not a dirty word. That everyone has a say in government, even the minority. You know, one day you're the minority, you might be the majority the next time. It is the golden rule, maybe, and that may be something that we'll never be able to accomplish. For each party, you better start figuring out who you are. And if you have room for difference of opinions, the Republicans that I know no longer have a home. Many of the Republicans or Democrats that I know no longer have a home. I don't know where all this is going. And Juan is a professor, and he'll tell you how the parties were going to be defining themselves after this election. And I'm not saying that something couldn't happen overnight and Vice President Harris takes the blue wall or makes up for losing Wisconsin or something. But, you know, Michigan and Pennsylvania are vital. But if it's going where we think it's going, the question then comes, what do you do with it? What does a President Trump or a President Harris do with this kind of a win? And what happens to our political parties and left in the hands of individuals that just really lack civility, understanding, or even a sense of duty and responsibility to cooperate?
Maybe you and I should run for Congress again, Charlie.
Well, you know, it wasn't all that much. It wasn't always that much fun.
Smile, see?
Oh no! I mean, people will say, "What is the best advice you ever got? What is the worst advice you ever got?" Guess what? Running for Congress. It was the best advice I ever got, and it was the worst advice I ever got, and that tells you all you need to know about the job.
Well, gentlemen, thank you so much. It has been a pleasure getting to talk to you tonight and run all of this by you, for giving us your time in 2020 and again tonight.
And Jordan, let me also say that we were talking amongst ourselves about what a pro you are, and how thorough you are,
and knowledgeable,
and
quick,
and how you just made this so easy for all of us.
And Professor Juan, same to you.
Yeah.
Good job, good analysis.
As always.
Well researched, prepared. Good show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
All right. If we can, though, we do have Jay Avila, Mr. Cisneros. I know you were wondering about those propositions.
Let's hear 'em.
I'm hoping that he's going to be able to tell us a little bit about where that stands. It's now 11:03 in Bexar County. Jay Avila, Mr. Cisneros is on the edge of his seat. What is going on with these San Antonio propositions?
Well, what I have for you is I'm at the election headquarters right now, where it's a late night and we're overlooking the tabulation room. And this, of course, is where they tabulate all the ballots coming in from the polling sites around Bexar County. And inside there, it's kind of high security. They have state inspectors, poll watchers, presiding judges, a sheriff's deputy, and they're waiting for some of the larger polling sites to get through with their audits and then transmit their results here. Each site has to make sure that the number of people who signed in to vote is the same as the number of ballots recorded by the machines, and that can take a long time to reconcile that. And so at last check, 150 voting sites in Bexar County have turned in results out of 302. There's about 75,000 votes that have been finalized, and that's about a 52% voter turnout. But that's going to change, and they are expecting here to go well beyond midnight to finish up. Back to you, Jordan.
Jay, thank you. Hopefully you do not have to go beyond midnight. Thank you so much for your time. We are wrapping up here at the Your Voice, Your Vote live stream. Professor Sepulveda, I would not have been able to do this without you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for all of your research and your insights. It was amazing to have you. Thank you to all of our reporters across Texas that called in and shared their analysis and their candidate interviews with us. Thank you so much for tuning in on any of our platforms. You can still find this online, and our websites will be continuously updating through the night for those results. I want to show you my crew one more time because they put up with me all night long. There they are. We have producer Jordan, we have Javier, we have Chris Cordoba, we've got Josh Larson, and to all of the crew that you can't see, we are in the middle of a whole newsroom right now, and they've been listening to me talk for hours and hours. They're angels, all of them. So thank you all, everybody behind the scenes, everybody that joined us tonight. We'll see you in 2028.